Chapter 877. Philip sent a message, and he received a reply a few seconds later. Master Hum, they would like to meet you privately. You could decide the time and place. Hum, I see, Han Shao pondered. The Radiant Federation coming to find him was a little sensitive, but beyond grade A allies were not the subordinates of a universal civilization, so they still had this bit of freedom. Even if the dynasty knew about it, it would not be a big problem. Han Shao pondered for a few seconds before replying. Send them a private message. Reply to the other party that I don't accept private meetings. I don't want to have any common secrets with them for the time being. Invite them to the Black Star Army as guests for me. If they're willing to accept, they can come. Since they had taken the initiative to find him, and he had not done anything bad, it would not be good to be secretive. He might as well invite them to his territory openly. Otherwise, it would seem like he and the Radiant Federation were plotting something, which would arouse suspicion. The second round of the Space-Time Amber Soul Connection mission required him to come into contact with the descendants of the Space-Time Freezer. Because the Radiant Federation was protecting this race, Han Shao did not have the time to complete it. However, now that they had taken the initiative to find him, it was a small surprise for Han Shao, saving him a lot of effort. However, he could not be too impatient. After all, they were the ones who had taken the initiative to find him, so he had to follow his rules. After sending out the invitation, the Radiant Federation did not reply immediately. It seemed like they were considering it. Han Shao was not in a hurry. He took out his communicator and contacted Terakov. Terakov's projection appeared, and he smiled. Black Star, you're finally free to contact me? Chief Commander, how have you been recently? It's still the same, eating dirt in the flickering world. When are you coming back to continue exploring? Let's wait a little longer. As soon as possible. In a few years, the first phase of development will probably end, and we'll enter the construction phase. After digesting the territories of the 3-star clusters, the second phase of development will begin. After exchanging a few pleasantries with the other party, Han Shao went straight to the point. He wiped the smile off his face and said seriously, I haven't contacted the outside world for a while. The negotiations have been going on for months. Have the Empire and Ethereal come up with a solution? There should be no problem. Terakov nodded. On the surface, both sides are blaming each other, but in private, they have already reached a few agreements. The remaining issues are just minor details. The Arcane Church has paid a huge price for the ransom, and the exact amount has to be kept a secret. I can't tell you that either. I can only say that the other side has made political, military, and economic concessions. They even opened up some technical information. In short, the dynasty promised the Arcane Church to redeem 3 beyond grade as Dylan, Mercer, and Taylor. Only Sagman is still in our hands as a bargaining chip. Han Shao nodded. The foundation of a civilization was always the race, and the fights between each other were all for status and resources. Compared to the long history of a civilization, every beyond grade, it was just a shooting star that crossed a certain part of history. Exchanging 3 beyond grade A captives for various resources that were beneficial to their own development was the deal that the dynasty was looking forward to. The 3 universal civilizations competed with each other, but they were on the same side. Although there were occasional conflicts between them, none of them could destroy the other. More importantly, they had to suppress the civilizations below them, maintain order, and consolidate their position as the overlord. By the way, how did they deal with the space-time amber? Han Shao asked. As the Arcane Church researched the amber, the name of the space-time amber had spread throughout the universe. Now, all the major organizations knew that the 2 universal treasures in Black Star's hands were the Evolution Cube and the space-time amber. Thus, he had a special position among the beyond grade as the Arcane Church is unable to break the seal and wants the dynasty to help remove it. However, the dynasty has been delaying it and did not contact you, so you still don't know. Does the dynasty plan to agree? The Arcane Church is willing to pay more ransom, and the dynasty plans to ask you to remove the seal on one of the captives. We'll talk about the rest later. When the time comes, we'll invite you to the Central Galaxy. Sure. Han Shao nodded. The army players were having a lot of fun with the Gulul Civilization War recruitment and the flickering world. Before version 3.0 ended, there was no need for him to interfere, so he would be free. Furthermore, he was prepared to head to the central galaxy to find some helpers to deal with ES God. I'd like to ask, has the dynasty found any traces of ES God? There are some clues. According to the intelligence network, there were sightings of the fallen Ark fleet in the primeval Star River. The wormholes in the shattered star ring should have sent them there. That's good. Han Shao subconsciously clenches fists. The arcane church has already given in, and the dynasty can now deal with ES God. Tarakov observed Han Zhao's expression and suddenly said, I feel that you have a very firm killing intent toward ES God. That's right. He's been eyeing the evolution cube for a long time and almost killed me. How can I not hate him? Han Shao shrugged. It's different. Tarakov shook his head and did not continue. It was not just because of the evolution cube. He felt that Han Zhao's hostility toward ES God seemed to carry a vague sense of anxiety, as if ES God was a special threat to Han Shao. In any case, the upper echelons have already sent troops to attack the fallen Ark in the desolate universe belt of the central galaxy. ES God is not in the main camp, and the dynasty plans to send people to kill him. You're also on the list. Even if you don't ask, the upper echelons will come looking for you soon. Got it, I'll go. I'll participate in this operation on the way to the central galaxy. After chatting for a while more, Han Shao hung up the communicator and exhaled. As the final boss of the chaotic evil faction, ES God had never been killed by the three universal civilizations. The three universal civilizations had targeted ES God many times, but they had never been able to kill him. The dynasty might have already treated dealing with ES God as a routine. He was probably the only one who had a firm killing intent toward ES God. I hope we won't make the same mistake this time, Han Shao thought. If he could get rid of ES God this time, he would be able to eliminate the hidden dangers of the World Tree's early invasion. It was not that Han Shao did not have confidence in the three universal civilizations. In his previous life, the World Tree War was also a Pyrrhic victory, and the current three universal civilizations might not be able to win against the World Tree. Some of the ferocious people in the later versions had yet to mature. This was especially true for the players. Ding! At this time, Philip received a reply from the Radiant Federation. The other party accepted Han Zhao's invitation. On the other side, at the Radiant Federation stronghold in the Shattered Star Ring, Mona put down his communicator. He was the emissary who had contacted Han Shao this time, and he was also a descendant of the space-time freezer. His skin was ice blue, and there were diamond-like crystals on it. Black Star has agreed to meet, Mona reported to the upper echelons. Remember your mission this time. First, you're to test Black Star's attitude. Second, you're to find out the origin of the space-time amber. If the results are not ideal, don't propose a trade. Also, don't take any unnecessary actions. Mona nodded seriously. The Radiant Federation wanted to break the seal on the 10,000 deity scepter, but Black Star was an ally of the dynasty. The chances of him agreeing to their request were very slim. If there were not enough benefits, Black Star would not take the risk of offending the dynasty to help them break the seal. Black Star could obtain most of the resources from the Red Empire, so there was no need for him to trade with them. Therefore, the Radiant Federation could only test if Black Star had any special needs. Although the chances were slim, the Radiant Federation still wanted to give it a try. Vader was not willing to guard the 10,000 deity scepter but not be able to use it. He had already offended the Arcane Church, so he could not leave without any gains. I won't do anything rash, but Your Excellency Manison. Mona turned around and looked to the side. A mechanical body was standing there. This was Manison's Lord's Descent medium. It had not been activated yet, and Manison's consciousness was not attached to it. It was being controlled by a remote artificial intelligence. Hearing this, Manison showed a projection through the remote link and said, "Don't worry about me. I'm visiting Black Star in my personal capacity. I won't interfere with your matters." Hearing this, Mona could only nod. With his level, he did not have the right to control Manison. Manison shook his head with a subtle expression. He was about to meet Han Xiao. Manison had been friends with him for a long time. In fact, he would pay attention to every Beyond Grade A mechanic. During this period, Black Star's name had spread throughout the Beyond Grade A circle of the three universal civilizations. He planned to personally test Black Star's strength. Only then would he be able to determine what price he should pay for the space-time amber. Wrote 2 versions, but they were not very good, so I deleted them. Let me think about it, and planned the overall progress of the plot. Chapter 878. After putting on his clothes and tidying up his appearance, Han Xiao pushed open the door of the actual combat training room and walked out. Outside was a silver-white alloy corridor, and the ceiling was lit with white light. The corridor was circular in shape, and the left and right sides were actual combat training rooms. The alloy door had the room number engraved in black, and the floating virtual screen showed the user's identity. This area was the exclusive training ground for the officers. The Army headquarters satellite was huge, and the surface was divided into many bases. The place Han Xiao was at was the core base. Han Xiao touched his stomach. He had just completed his promotion, so he was full of energy. However, he felt that he had used up a lot of energy mentally. After thinking about it, he decided to go to the dining area to prepare a good meal to reward himself. He was afraid that his taste buds would go numb sooner or later if he swallowed nutrition paste all day long. The dining area was a living facility. Due to the different tastes of the different races, the chefs were also from different races. The base was huge, and the means of transportation were anti-gravity, floating ball-shaped vehicles. They were all products of the logistics department. In his own home, Han Xiao would not run for no reason. He casually found a floating ball-shaped vehicle and slowly flew toward the dining area. Looking from afar, the dining area was filled with people. As he got closer, the noise became louder and louder. No matter what time it was, the dining area was always the densest. Han Xiao landed on the parking platform of the dining area, casually parked the floating ball-shaped vehicle, and walked in. The army warriors who were chatting at the entrance noticed Han Xiao's figure, and their bodies that were leaning lazily against the wall suddenly straightened. "Hello, Army Commander." "Yo, hello. Have you eaten?" Han Xiao nodded and casually greeted. Usually, when he met his subordinates in the headquarters, he would usually reply. The arrogance was for outsiders to see, and his attitude toward his own people had always been very easygoing. Entering the spacious cafeteria hall, many people noticed Han Xiao. Pairs of eyes gathered on him, and the atmosphere became quiet for a moment. Then, many people stood up and bowed with excitement. Greetings could be heard one after another. There were also people who did not move from their seats and continued eating, but they raised their heads and looked at Han Xiao curiously. As the Black Star Corps continued to expand, many new members had not seen Han Xiao in person. Han Xiao also did not usually appear in public areas. Therefore, even within the army, Han Xiao's image as the boss had always been mysterious. Furthermore, the enemy of ethereal incident added a layer of halo to Han Xiao. His reputation increased day by day, and his image in the eyes of the army members became higher and higher. Large organizations usually had internal conflicts, and the Black Star Corps was the same. At the current scale, the internal factional problems were even more obvious. Warriors from different departments, races, and backgrounds spontaneously formed small circles. Only Han Xiao could completely suppress everyone. As long as he was there, the army would be solid. "Don't look at me. Eat your food." Han Xiao helplessly waved his hand. This was the reason why he did not like to show himself. Every time he strolled around the base, it would be like a leader inspecting his subordinates. "Teacher, here." At this time, Han Xiao heard a familiar voice. He turned around and saw Sylvia also eating there. She was waving her hand and calling for him. Beside her was Erosia. Han Xiao walked over and sat opposite her. He casually took a brown caramel meat leg from the plate and took a bite. The meat was tender and juicy, and it slid lightly on his tongue. It tasted just right of roasted meat, oil, and secret sauce on his taste buds. After chewing a few times, it released an even richer aroma. The taste is not bad. The chef here needs to get a raise. Han Xiao finished the leg in a few bites and smacked his lips. Still not satisfied, he picked up other dishes. Remember to give the cafeteria department money to research a new flavor of nutrition paste. Got it. You really have a deep love for nutrition paste, Sylvia muttered as she cut the vegetables. It takes 10 minutes to eat a meal, but it only takes 3 seconds to drink a tube of nutrition paste. I like the more efficient method. Learn from my sister, Han Xiao joked. I'm in charge of all the chores. You have more free time than me. Why do you need to save time? Sylvia rolled her eyes and continued eating. Han Xiao looked at Erosia beside him. How had you been recently? Erosia did not raise her head and focused on the food in front of her. Her face was expressionless, and her cheeks were moving quickly like a squirrel. The number of plates in front of her was more than 10 times that of Sylvia. She and Sylvia had known each other for a long time, and their relationship had always been good. Erosia's strength could no longer keep up with Han Xiao's footsteps, and she was gradually unable to move together with Han Xiao. However, she had a special position in the army. Due to her seniority and her beauty, she was the crush of countless army members. At the same time, she also attracted a wave of player fans. Because of the reboot mission, Han Xiao did not really want to meet Erosia and Rista. At his current level, it was not worth it to become enemies with the Mecha Empire over such a small matter. Rista had always been pestering him, but Han Xiao did not have the intention to help them. At this stage, he did not have the ability to do so. By the way, since we've met here, there's no need to send you a message. Han Xiao said, after some time, the Radiant Federation will send someone to meet me. You can make the arrangements then. Sylvia was shocked. She raised her head and said, Teacher, you're an ally of the dynasty. Isn't it not too good to meet the Radiant Federation? Since they're taking the initiative to meet me, I should at least listen to what they have to say. As Han Xiao was speaking, a voice suddenly sounded behind him and interrupted him. Blackstar, I have something to give you. Han Xiao turned around and saw a male player with an ID above his head, standing behind him with a black object in his hand. Another gift to gain favorability. The players treated him as an NPC and thought that giving him the right gift would increase his favorability. Han Xiao felt helpless. The moment he showed his face in the base, there would always be people trying to do this. He was already used to it. Han Xiao took the gift and looked at it. It was a slightly rare or material. To be honest, Han Xiao did not understand why someone would give him an ore. Did they think that he could not afford it? Looking at the other party's expectant face, Han Xiao's mouth twitched. He resisted the urge to lower his favorability and forced a smile. Thank you. The male player waited for a while, but did not receive any notification. He scratched his head and stared at the rare material in Han Xiao's hand with a reluctant expression. Can I get the gift back? Han Xiao's face darkened. Brother, you're too honest. No. Sigh, what a loss. The male player did not give up. Then, do you have anything for me to do? No, Scram. Of course, this was only what he thought. He cannot be so rude to players. I don't have anything for you to do now. If you're very free, you can either join the war in the Gyul civilization or participate in the exploration of the flickering world. There's bound to be a suitable job for you. Han Xiao cursed with a smile. All right. The male player turned around and left with a look of pity. In order to avoid being surrounded by the players who had heard the news, Han Xiao quickly finished his meal and left the dining area. He went to the logistics department to check on Nero's progress. Perfect mechanical sense was a talent that he had been eyeing for a long time, and he had always been paying attention to Nero's progress. Arriving at the logistics department, Han Xiao walked into Reynolds' office and immediately saw Nero, who was doing his homework on the table. After drinking the dragon blood potion, Nero's face was rosy, and he looked very healthy. However, his expression was extremely bitter, as though he had swallowed a pile of Chinese gold thread. His face was scrunched up, and the strength he used to write was so great that it was as though he wanted to use his pen to cut the thick book into pieces. Little Nero, Godfather is here to see you. Han Xiao walked over with a smile. Nero did not even look at Han Xiao and turned his head away with a bitter expression. Han Xiao turned to look at Reynolds and asked, How's his learning going? The dragon blood potion is very useful, and it has saved him a lot of time to sleep. His learning speed has increased greatly, and he will be able to learn the basic theory very quickly. I plan to add some practical mechanical assembly lessons into his learning schedule, Reynolds said with a serious tone. Nero's hand trembled, and the pen fell onto the table with a clatter. He was petrified. Han Zhao's lips curled up. You're really the devil. At this moment, the door opened once more, and Fu Ding walked in wearing a loose blue robe. When he saw Han Xiao, he was stunned for a moment before revealing a warm smile. Black Star, you're here too. What are you doing here? Han Xiao raised his brows. I'm here to see Nero. Fu Ding smiled. I'm also here to play some cards with him. Nero hurriedly got up and threw himself into Fu Ding's embrace. His expression was as though he had seen his savior, and he turned around to make a face at Han Xiao. Cough, cough. Fu Ding will occasionally come over to play cards with him. This is his entertainment time, Reynolds explained. Han Zhao's eyes were filled with astonishment, and his expression seemed to be asking, You're actually giving him entertainment time? Once every half a month. Oh, sorry to disturb you. It wasn't easy for him to play, and Nero couldn't wait to take out the Wayne cards. He tugged on Fiden's sleeves and urged him to start. Fiden smiled and took out his deck of cards to play with Nero. Seeing this, Han Zhao's brows twitched. He always felt that Fu Ding was pampering Nero. Could it be because Fu Ding and Chun Xing were unable to have children? Although Han Xiao did not like playing cards, he still understood the rules. When he glanced at the side, Han Xiao sucked in a breath of cold air. This was the battle between the European kings? It was as though he had seen the goddess of luck practicing left and right. Looking at Nero's skillful hands, Han Xiaoxin felt a little pain. My child, you've been corrupted by her lose and Hardaway in the end. I still have to correct you. Han Xiao held back his laughter and threw a luck curse at Nero. He then shook his head and quietly left the crime scene. After waiting for a period of time in the headquarters to familiarize himself with his skyrocketing strength and deal with some miscellaneous matters, the emissaries from the Radiant Federation arrived as promised. The spaceship landed in the Black Star Corps headquarters, and Mona brought a group of people down from the spaceship. They were led to the guest room by the reception robot. Han Xiao waited in the guest room for a while, and the door opened automatically. The emissaries from the Radiant Federation walked in and took their seats after greeting each other. High-grade super officer of the Radiant Federation, Mona introduced himself. Han Xiao sensed the energy in the other party's body and realized that he was a calamity grade. He then opened the interface to take a look. Indeed, after coming into contact with the race of the space-time freezer, the space-time amber mission notification popped up. The second round of Legacy of the Primordial Ones, Space-Time Freezer, has been completed. Plus 1 soul connection to Space-Time Amber, current level. 2/5 the Space-Time Amber has started to get close to you. Your buff, Space-Time Amber's feedback, has been refreshed. Buff duration, constant. Han Xiaoxin was overjoyed, but his expression did not change. As the soul connection deepened, he developed a sense of affinity with the space-time amber. In his senses, the space-time amber seemed to have become an old object that he had been holding for a long time. The increase in the soul connection would also increase the efficiency of creating amber balls. However, he was currently in a meeting with someone, so he could not test it out for the time being. Han Xiao also took a look at the third round of the mission. Third round mission requirements. Head to the ancestral land of the space-time freezer's race and take his body on a tour. All right, there's no way to cheat this time. Han Xiao mumbled to himself. The ancestral land of the space-time freezer was in the territory of the Radiant Federation. If he wanted to complete the third round, he would have to go there personally. After all, it was impossible for them to carry out the wandering planet plan and transport the ancestral land over to him. Closing the interface, Han Xiao went straight to the point. I've never had much interaction with the Radiant Federation. Why are you looking for me? It's like this, Mona said with a serious expression. We, the Radiant Federation, are very curious about the space-time amber. After looking through the information, we discovered that the space-time amber seems to be related to a beyond grade A in our history. Oh, there's such a thing? Han Xiao pretended to be confused, but his heart skipped a beat. The Radiant Federation had confidential information about the space-time freezer, so their guess was really F*King accurate. As for the Radiant Federation openly expressing their interest in the space-time amber, Han Xiao was not surprised at all. After the battle on Planet Lighthouse, basically every galactic organization was curious about his two universal treasures. They would definitely have done some research in private, so there was nothing to hide. Do you know about the space-time freezer? Mona asked. Let me check it out. Han Xiao put his heart into acting and waited for a while before nodding. His expression did not change, and his eyes did not even blink. Oh, I know now. You're saying that the space-time amber is related to the space-time freezer. Mona had been observing Han Xiao's expression the whole time, but he could not see anything. We can't confirm it either. It's just a guess. I'm a descendant of the space-time freezer, so I asked the Radiant Federation to send me to contact you, hoping to understand the origin of the space-time amber. Why should I care about the origin of the space-time amber? What good does it do me? Han Xiao raised his brows, but he understood what was going on. The reason the Radiant Federation did this was because they thought that he had just picked up the space-time amber by luck and did not know the origin of this universal treasure. Thus, they connected the space-time amber to the ancestor of the Mona race and used this as a reason to contact him. Mona wanted to find traces of his ancestor, and it did not involve any benefits. This request seemed reasonable, but the Radiant Federation naturally knew that he would not let an outsider come into contact with the space-time amber for this reason. So it was only a reason to get close to him. Don't worry. Because it's related to our ancestor, the Radiant Federation only wants to help us investigate and add information about this new universal treasure to the public database. They have no other intentions toward your space-time amber, Mona explained. I believe you, Han Xiao said seriously. Really? Chapter 879. Mona heard Han Xiao's sarcasm and blushed a little. In short, we hope that you can allow us to investigate the space-time amber. The Radiant Federation will thank you. I refuse. Han Xiao waved his hand. I have no obligation to cooperate with the investigation. Then, can you let me see the space-time amber with my own eyes? This is my personal request. No. The atmosphere was a little stiff, but Mona had expected this and was not surprised. Blackstar obviously would not let outsiders come into contact with a universal treasure. He pretended to take a sip of his drink, put down the cup, looked around, and suddenly lowered his voice. Your Excellency Blackstar, what do you think of the Radiant Federation? Finally, he's testing my attitude. Han Zhao's expression did not change. My opinion, I should be asking you. You helped the Arcane Church during the Battle of Planet Lighthouse, then turned to help the dynasty. I've never been sure if I should treat you as an enemy or a friend. What do you think? Mona thought for a while and said with a deep voice, although we're in different factions, we're very willing to be friends with Your Excellency Blackstar. Han Xiao raised his brows. How about this? Let's be more direct. We're destined to be enemies in terms of factions, but we could be business friends. You don't have any objections, right? Of course. This was one of the conditions that the upper echelons had given him before he left, so Mona did not hesitate. The three universal civilizations competed with each other and frequently traded with each other. They cooperated in many industries. In this era of galactic integration, as long as the civilizations did not go to war, they would not cut off their economic and livelihood cooperation. The three universal civilizations were used to this. Galactic integration was also a part of maintaining the chain of governance, magnifying the price of being isolated. Therefore, in terms of business, the universal civilizations would not stop their beyond grade A allies from expanding their businesses and earning money from other civilizations. However, if they used the name of business to carry out espionage activities and betray the interests of the civilization, the universal civilizations would not let them off easily. However, beyond grade A allies generally would not easily allow outsiders to share their share of resources. If they wanted to develop business in another faction, they would definitely be ostracized and suppressed by that faction. If they did not go through official relations, it would be very difficult to develop business in another faction's territory. You should be clear about our style, Mona said. Among the three universal civilizations, our Radiant Federation is the most inclusive. We welcome all financial groups and organizations in the universe to develop here. Furthermore, the Shattered Star Ring is also under the jurisdiction of the Radiant Federation. It can be said that we have always been working together. Han Xiao nodded. This was true. The three universal civilizations each had their own unique characteristics. The Empire had an iron-blooded style, the Ethereal had a strong religious aura, and the Radiant Federation was the most open and wealthy, flourishing in many fields. Since you want to make friends, you should at least show some sincerity. Talking about feelings costs money. Han Xiao smiled. If you're willing, we can help the Black Star Core develop business in the Radiant Federation at any time, Mona said. Han Xiao rolled his eyes. He roughly understood what the Radiant Federation was trying to say. First, they talked about the space-time amber. Then, they proposed a business cooperation. The situation was very clear. The Radiant Federation's ultimate goal was to research or borrow the space-time amber, and they needed his help. Because of the previous incident, their relationship was not good, so it was easy to imagine the success rate if they directly asked for his help. Therefore, the Radiant Federation had a few plans. The most reliable one was to use business cooperation to break the ice and ease the relationship between the two sides before discussing further cooperation in the future. From the looks of it, the Radiant Federation did not plan to do it overnight, but to maintain a long-term relationship in preparation for a future request. As the party being requested, Han Xiao held the initiative and did not need to reply immediately. Let's talk about it later. I don't have such thoughts for now. Understood. If you have any other requests, we will consider them. No matter what, the Radiant Federation looks forward to working with you. Mona's tone was sincere. The Radiant Federation was not in a hurry. In order to remove the seal on the 10,000 deity scepter, they could wait. Other requests. Han Zhao's eyes moved. He thought for a while and smiled mysteriously. I'm personally willing to be friends with the Radiant Federation, but you once helped Ethereal deal with me. I feel that other than sincerity, you should also express an apology. He was talking about the multi-dimensional sky opening transportation device. Back then, the Radiant Federation did not expect that they would need Black Star's help. It could be said that they had dug a hole for themselves, but if they did not do so, they might not be able to obtain the 10,000 deity scepter. There were pros and cons. Mona's eyes lit up. He was not afraid of Han Xiao holding him accountable, but he was afraid that Han Xiao would not have any requests. What do you think? How about this? If you can do me a favor, I'll forgive you. Only by resolving the past can our relationship start anew. What do you need us to do? Mona perked up. God also participated in the Planet Lighthouse operation. The Red Empire was busy dealing with the Arcane Church previously and is now preparing to deal with this accomplice. I have quite a big grudge with God, so if you help me and the dynasty to eliminate God, as long as we get rid of him, our past problems will be written off. What do you think? Han Zhao's tone became more serious. Mona was stunned and a little surprised. He thought that Han Xiao wanted some special benefits, but he did not expect that he would ask them to help him eliminate God. It turned out that the grudge between Black Star and God was this big. I can't make the decision on this. I have to report to the upper echelons, Mona said honestly. But from my experience, the upper echelons will agree to your request. If it was something else, the Radiant Federation might hesitate. However, dealing with God had always been the political correctness of the three universal civilizations. If they could kill God, it would be beneficial to the Radiant Federation. This time, a guy behind Mona covered in armor took a few steps forward and took off his helmet, revealing the head of the mechanical body. He then spoke in a cold, synthesized electronic voice. I can do this for you. Hearing this, Han Xiao turned around and saw the material of the mechanical body. His heart skipped a beat. With his current experience, he could tell that this mechanical person was very high-tech. It seemed to be a special machine made by a beyond grade A super, very similar to the carrier of the Lord's Descent. You are Mecha Empire, Manison, the Ancient One, Papachi. Han Zhao's expression changed slightly, revealing a hint of surprise and vigilance. This mechanical body did not have the Lord's descent, so it did not have any beyond grade A energy fluctuations. Before the Mecha Empire spoke, he had thought that this was just a normal mechanical guard. In terms of stealth, mechanical soldiers had a special advantage. Han Shao did not expect Manison to take the initiative to look for him. The Mecha Empire's position in the universe was extraordinary, and it was almost publicly recognized as the peak of mechanics. Furthermore, he had more or less had some indirect interactions with the other party. Han Shao was very sensitive to the name of the Mecha Empire and was wary of it. Mona coughed and explained, "His Excellency Manison learned that we wanted to meet you and requested to move together. Blackstar, actually I've always wanted to visit you, and I took this opportunity to come over." Manison looked at Han Zhao's frowning brows and said with an emotionless tone, "Why? Am I not welcome?" Han Zhao's brows relaxed, and a smile appeared on his face again. "Of course not. I just feel that it's a coincidence. I've also heard a lot about you and have always wanted to visit you, but there hasn't been a suitable opportunity." This time, Mona stood up and said, "This is my communicator number, Your Excellency Blackstar. I'll report your intentions to the upper echelons, and I'll give you a reply very soon. I won't disturb the two of you for now. Your Excellency Manison, I'll return to the spaceship and wait for you." Manison's mechanical body nodded, and Mona left the room, following Philip's guidance to the dock. Only Han Shao and Manison were left in the room, staring at each other. Your Excellency Blackstar, this is the first time we've met, right?" Manison seemed to be smiling, but the synthesized electronic voice did not show the slightest hint of a smile, and it even sounded a little creepy. With the other party's technology, it was impossible for him not to create an anthropomorphic voice system. Using such a voice was clearly intentional. To be exact, this can't be considered a meeting. "You've seen my face, but I haven't seen yours yet," Han Shao said with a raised brow, but he was secretly trying to figure out Manison's intentions. It was normal for mechanics to visit each other, but he felt that Manison had other intentions. There will be a chance in the future. The mechanical body pointed at its chest and said, "Do you mind if my consciousness descends?" Han Shao thought about it and shook his head. Boom! The next moment, a surge of energy descended through the quantum infinite distance transmission channel. The mechanical body trembled, and a dazzling golden electric light burst out. The energy level soared. Manison's Lord's Descent had activated. The mechanical body's movements instantly became much more natural. Manison twisted his neck and said calmly, "This is much more comfortable." Long-distance communication was like a video chat, but Lord's Descent was immersive. Han Shao smiled and did not say anything, but he was shocked. When Manison's Lord's Descent was activated, the mechanical force released by the mechanical body was extremely powerful. It even made Han Shao feel pressured. To be able to make another beyond grade A feel pressured, the strength of the Mecha Empire was unfathomable. Among the beyond grade, as he had seen, only ES God's aura was comparable to the Mecha Empire's. This was only the mechanical body of the Lord's Descent and not Manison's actual body. I wonder how many levels higher this guy is than me. Han Shao thought about it and gestured toward the door. "Your Excellency Manison, shall we talk somewhere else?" "All right, can you take me on a tour of the Blackstar Corps?" Manison nodded. "Sure." The two of them stood up and left the room together. They chatted while strolling around the Army headquarters. Although they had just met, the two of them had a tacit understanding not to talk about sensitive things. They started from the Army headquarters and commented on the technology used by the headquarters. Han Shao maintained his quantum network vision at all times and told Philip to keep the system self-checking. Although the possibility was not high, he was still on guard against Manison's virtual intrusion. After all, the name of the Mecha Empire was equivalent to the existence next door. No matter where he went, he would make the owner suspect that he had been cuckolded. However, Manison did not have such thoughts and only focused on talking about mechanical knowledge. It was as if they were really just talking about technology. In terms of technology exchange, the Mecha Empire was indeed very powerful. Manison had accumulated knowledge for many years and had even walked at the forefront of technological innovation. Who knew how many mechanical blueprints he had come up with? In terms of main class standards, Han Xiao was indeed far behind the other party. The other party had not lived for so many years for nothing. This was the first time he had come into contact with the Mecha Empire. Han Xiao smiled but did not let his guard down. Other than his preconceived notions, he was also worried about the other party's identity. By the way, you said that you're going to help me deal with ES God? ES God is currently in the primeval Star River, which is my headquarters. If the Radiant Federation agrees to your request, I should be the one to take action. Manison turned to look at Han Xiao's face. Of course, I have my own motives. What are they? Han Xiao was curious. Firstly, I warned ES God before not to come to my territory. Secondly, I hope to get something from you. Manison did not hide his intentions. Want something from me? Han Xiao's eyes sparkled. What the Mecha Empire wanted was naturally not his machinery, but his universal treasure. Was it the evolution cube or the space-time amber? However, Manison did not continue speaking and looked to the side. The two of them were currently in a circular corridor. On one side of the corridor were actual combat training rooms. The two of them walked around and arrived at the training area of the base. Since you're here, shall we spar? Manison's tone was emotionless. Here? Han Xiao shook his head. With our strength, we'll probably flip my headquarters upside down. Don't worry, I didn't bring any other mechanical army. I only have this mechanical shell. Manison shrugged. You can control a mechanical shell as well. Don't overdo it. This way, the commotion will be small and it won't hurt our relationship. If that's the case, Han Xiao pondered for a while before nodding. All right. He did not need to use his main body to fight. If the shell was damaged, he could just repair it. This was very safe. He guessed that Manison wanted to measure his strength through the strength of his mechanical force. He had broken through the energy rank limit of 52,000. With his mechanical force at this level, he would not be easily destroyed. Han Xiao had the confidence to spar. Furthermore, the carrier of Lord's Descent would share most of the main body's abilities. He also wanted to take a look at Manison's attributes through the combat information. Recommended a book called Human Immortal Martial Emperor, written by demonic Qianma, a beautiful lady. Introduction. The two immortals of heaven and earth are precious, and the two immortals of gods and ghosts are ethereal. In my life, I only seek to suppress the heavens with martial arts and become the ruler of the world. Chapter 880. The two of them randomly chose a combat training room. Han Xiao scanned the room, and the door opened automatically. He then walked in. The combat training rooms also had different configurations. Only the more highly configured ones could withstand stronger battle shockwaves. Low-configuration combat training rooms were open to ordinary army members and army players for free, and they could only withstand Grade B attacks at most. If one wanted to use a high-configuration combat training room, they would have to pay rent. According to the rank of the member in the army, the rent would be discounted. Usually, players use the combat training rooms to farm their skills and experience. In the officer training area of the headquarters, the combat training rooms were all equipped with the highest configuration. It was more than enough for calamity grades to fight, but could barely withstand the shockwaves of a beyond Grade A super. However, the two of them were only using a carrier to spar. As long as they controlled the power of their attacks and held back a little, it would not be a problem for a short period of time. The top configuration training room was very spacious. The floor and walls were pure white, showing a grid-like appearance. The material was a combination of some kind of tough alloy, polymer material, and plastic nanomaterial. It had a self-repairing function, and it was covered with a virtual reality coating to simulate the environment. At the same time, the walls and floor could be moved to change the shape of the room. Together with the sensory misdirection of the simulated environment, it could create a battlefield environment far larger than the real area of the room. The premise was that one had to open their mind and accept the sensory misdirection. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to take effect. Of course, one could also do some things in the actual combat training room that were not suitable for children. In the Army's training room usage guidelines, the Army members, players, were prohibited from occupying the training room to watch immersive movies. The players were going to hit the sandbags, but these people were not letting go of the sandbags. They were occupying the toilet, but not taking a sh*T. Han Xiao let Philip choose the environment randomly. The appearance of the ground and walls quickly changed, turning into a lush, blue-green forest. The view in the distance was an endless sea of trees and a faraway mountain shrouded in a thin layer of fog that could only be seen halfway up. The training room simulated a realistic wind, bringing with it the coolness of the morning rain. The wind blew the fog through the sea of trees, causing the canopy to sway and rustle. Their noses could even smell the fresh and moist air and the faint smell of the earth. It was as if they were there. Madison looked around and muttered to himself, "Being accompanied by machines all day, all I see are heavy colors. Sometimes, I even forget what nature looks like." Han Xiao opened the secondary dimension and took out a mechanical body. It was a streamlined humanoid body with a silver, black, and yellow shell. This was the mammoth mechanical body, updated to the RX-002 generation. Compared to the RX-001 generation, its performance was slightly different. The RX-001 generation mammoth was a standard model. It had comprehensive abilities and was relatively balanced in all aspects. The RX-002 generation mammoth reduced the size of its skeleton and nanotendons, sacrificing a portion of its strength to increase its flexibility. It was also equipped with more mechanical weapons and was more suitable for battle. Lord's Descent. S effect would change according to the basic configuration of the carrier. Different carriers would share different abilities and attributes when receiving Lord's Descent, so different types of mechanical shells had to be built. Han Xiao immediately activated Lord's Descent. Blue-gold mechanical force shot out and struck the mechanical shell, exploding with a blinding electric light. Z. Han Xiao's consciousness split into two. One stayed in his main body, and the other controlled the mechanical shell. Han Xiao's main body flew up high and did not participate in the battle. He controlled the carrier to stand a few hundred meters in front of Madison. This distance was no different from face to them. Han Xiao looked at the interface of the carrier. Because of the first-generation Black Star alloy, the carrier shared a few tank talents. Its resistance was quite high. In terms of attributes, it had a 64% bonus to strength, an 81% bonus to dexterity, and a 73% bonus to endurance. Han Xiao controlled the mammoth mechanical body to twist its neck and get used to it. The back armor then split open, releasing miniature hovering discs that formed a floating defense formation. Psionic ray muzzles appeared on his shoulders, chest, and abdomen. He raised his left arm and formed a shield, maintaining a psionic shield. A metal handle popped out from his right wrist, transforming into a high-level mechanical weapon that looked like a long sword. The blade was wrapped in energy, and Han Xiao held it in his hand. Seeing this, Madison's carrier also entered battle mode. He activated the hovering array, activated the psionic shield, and took out a long-handle mechanical weapon that looked like a crutch. Using Lord's Descent, to spar was equivalent to controlling his doppelganger to fight. No matter how fierce the mechanical shell battle was, both sides would not lose face. Without saying anything, they looked at each other for 2 seconds. Then, the two figures suddenly blurred and collided. Bang! The huge impact caused a shockwave. The trees around them all collapsed under the effect of the simulated destruction effect. In the sky, Han Zhao's hair was also blown back. The next moment, the two mechanical shells turned into blurry afterimages that were entangled together. They shuttled through the forest at an extremely fast speed. The long sword and the crutch clashed more than 1,000 times in a short period of time. Sparks, light, and electric arcs flew everywhere. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of wind, rain, and smithing could be heard. When the mechanical force clashed head-on, dazzling electric arcs exploded between the two of them, leaving huge pits where they stopped. They pierced through trees, ignited fires, and scorched the forest. Both of them tacitly used close combat and restrained their strength. They did not use powerful long-range weapons. Otherwise, the training room would definitely be destroyed. The two of them were only sparring and did not plan to use their trump cards. After all, the true strength of a mechanic could only be seen after using the Mech Legion. Both of them had the idea of testing each other, try to understand each other through the battle. Whoever obtained more information would benefit the most. While fighting, Manison felt the strength of Han Zhao's mechanical force. At his level, he only needed to feel for a bit to roughly know Han Zhao's current strength. Of course, the strength of Han Zhao's mechanical force was far from his. However, Manison was still quite surprised by Han Zhao's strength. He had heard of Han Zhao's feat of capturing Dylan alive. According to his guess, Black Star should have the highest level of mechanical sense talent like him. However, when they actually fought, Manison realized that Black Star's mechanical force was not as strong as he had expected. He did not seem to have the highest level of mechanical sense. However, Han Zhao's life level was much higher than he had imagined. Manison naturally knew about the first limit of the 52,000 energy rank. Just crossing this limit was not enough to shock him. However, comparing the time it took for Black Star to become a Beyond Grade A Super was the reason why Manison was shocked. Black Star had only been a Beyond Grade A Super for about a year and a half. In such a short time, he had already crossed the first limit. The life level transformation of a Beyond Grade A Super usually took 10 years as the unit of measurement. Manison had lived for so long, but this was the first time he had seen such an incredible growth rate. Such potential and talent, Manison pondered. Such an unbelievable growth speed made Black Star's current strength lose most of its value as a reference. However, knowing that Black Star had already broken through the first limit of the Beyond Grade A Super, Manison felt that he had achieved his goal of testing him. Furthermore, he felt that he had definitely profited from this test. He knew Black Star's exact strength, while Black Star only knew that he was very strong, but he did not know exactly how strong he was. Thinking of this, they clashed again. The high-frequency vibration function of their weapons bounced them away. Manison put away his weapon and said, "Let's stop here. Let's stop here. Otherwise, this room will be ruined." Han Xiao also stopped. Looking at the pockmarked training room, he also put away his weapon. His main body landed, deactivated Lord's Descent, and threw his mechanical body back into the secondary dimensional army box. As expected of the Mecha Empire, you're indeed strong. I have to say, your strength is beyond my imagination. Manison nodded. Han Xiao smiled and did not reply. Instead, he changed the topic and said, "Since we've toured the headquarters, come to my office and continue talking about ES God." Okay. The two of them left the training area. Walking on the road, Han Xiao casually chatted while secretly opening the interface, repeatedly looking at the battle information from earlier. Manison's level was a question mark, and the gap between them was not small. Thus, most of his attributes and skills were also question marks. However, some of them were displayed, including the abilities that the Mecha Empire had not used earlier. Mechanics were famous for having many abilities, and some of them overlapped with their own abilities and could be ignored. Among the unique abilities of the Mecha Empire, Han Xiao saw two molding talents. The first was perfect mechanical sense. This was within Han Zhao's expectations. As the pinnacle of mechanics, Manison definitely had top-notch talent. The other one was virtual technology innovation, Manison. The suffix indicated that this was an exclusive molding talent created by Manison. Its effect was to strengthen virtual technology type abilities, and the strengthening coefficient was 1.75x. Although it did not seem as good as the 2.5 times strengthening of Virtual Lord, the significance of the two was completely different. As long as a mechanic learned the ultimate knowledge, Virtual Creator, they would be able to obtain this molding talent. Virtual technology innovation. Manison was an exclusive ability that gave Manison a huge advantage in virtual technology. It belonged to the category of molding talents. Furthermore, In the introduction of this molding talent, it was written that after the virtual technology innovation, it has special effects. This was probably the core talent of Manison's trump card army, the indestructible mecha empire. Manison naturally had more than 2 molding talents, but that was all that was shown on the interface. However, based on the combat information and Manison's performance in his previous life, Han Xiaoxin had a certain understanding of Manison's strength. His main class is at least 1 stage higher than mine, and he has at least 4 molding talents. Furthermore, he has a mech army that is hundreds or even thousands of times larger than mine. How terrifying. It's best if I don't provoke him. Overall, Han Xiao was quite satisfied with this test. In terms of intelligence, he had profited. The combat information on the interface had revealed some abilities that the Mecha Empire had not displayed. Manison did not have an interface, so the Mecha Empire naturally had no way of knowing the abilities that he had not displayed. At most, he had only revealed his life rating. However, this was Han Zhao's intention from the start. He wanted to display a certain amount of strength so that the Mecha Empire would not look down on him. Due to the existence of the character summon card, the strength that Han Xiao had displayed was misleading. For example, perfect mechanical sense did not appear, so the information that Manison had received was biased. There was no way for him to see through him. Therefore, not only did I not lose out in this exchange of intelligence, I even profited greatly. The Mecha Empire had chosen the wrong opponent to test me. Han Zhao's lips curled up. The two of them had their own thoughts as they arrived at the office. After sitting down, Manison began to talk about his intentions. The other reason I came to visit you this time is to make a deal with you. Please speak. I'm quite interested in your space-time amber. According to what I know, this universal treasure can be used to create byproducts. I hope to purchase some from you for research purposes. So, he wants to buy amber balls. Han Xiao pondered for a moment before shaking his head. I'm sorry, but I don't plan to sell them. The space-time amber was one of his trump cards, and he had given it to Austin because he owed him a favor. Han Xiao did not plan to use it for profit, nor did he need to use it to get close to others. This thing was different from the evolution cube, and he did not want the amber ball to be circulated in the universe and used by others. He did not even provide it to the Red Empire, so naturally, he would not sell it to the Mecha Empire. Manison's position was extraordinary, and giving him face was one thing. However, on such a crucial issue, it was useless no matter how much face he had. That's a pity, but I understand. Manison shook his head. His expression could not be seen from the mechanical body, and the change in tone could not be heard. If you change your mind one day, you can come and find me again. Then about E is God. Han Xiao probed. Don't worry. I'll listen to the Radiant Federation on this. Manison casually skipped this topic, as if he did not mind Han Xiao rejecting him, and he did not have any intention of leaving. This time, he suddenly changed the topic. I have a subordinate in the Shattered Star Ring called Sardim. He once gave me a rather interesting report, saying that you once stole his mech legion and captured him alive for a period of time. That did happen. I was forced by the situation at the time. Han Xiaoxin became alert again. Don't worry. Since you didn't kill my people, there's no problem between us. I just feel that we're quite fated. To think that we actually crossed paths so long ago, Manison did not seem to have any intention of denouncing him. However, his next sentence made Han Zhao's hair stand on end. Speaking of our earliest interactions, this reminds me of something. Can I trouble you to return those 2 lost fellows to me? Manison's synthesized electronic voice did not fluctuate at all. Although he was smiling, there was no hint of a smile in his voice. The Mecha Empire actually knows about Erosia? Han Zhao's hair stood on end. He hurriedly tightened his expression and suppressed the waves in his heart. What do you mean? A long time ago, 2 lucky AI lives invaded my base. One stole one of my backup spaceships, and the other used my equipment to transform himself into an indestructible mechanical soldier. They tried to liberate their own kind, but were discovered by the base's defense mechanism in the end. They were chased by the automated troops and luckily fell into a wormhole, eventually ending up in your organization. At this point, Madison paused. Don't tell me you think that two AI lives can invade my base by themselves. Chapter 881. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and did not say anything. In fact, he had always had the same doubts about Rista's one-sided story, but Rista's answer was always the same, so he had no way of verifying it. Madison crossed his arms and slowly said, "Those two little fellows can't break through my virtual firewall. It's impossible for those two little fellows to break through the virtual firewall of my base. Behind them is another beyond grade A mechanic who wants my indestructible mechanic empire and wants to destroy my trump card team. Thus, while I'm not in the base, he secretly guided those two little fellows who don't know anything and secretly opened the virtual data channel for them. Unfortunately, his little trick was discovered by me, and his scheme ended in failure. I've always known that the little fellow who transformed herself into an indestructible mechanical soldier is staying on Floating Dragon Island. She used my energy transmission channel to steal my reconstructed matter, so of course, I could track her down. However, I didn't retrieve it because I don't care about those two little fellows. Furthermore, on account of my old friendship with Aesop, I don't want to come into contact with Dragon Emperor Ames. However, since I'm here today, you can return her to me while you're at it." Han Xiao rubbed his temples and felt a little helpless. When he recruited Erosia 20 years ago, he was only a grade B super. At that time, he was just an ordinary member of the universe. Naturally, he would not be placed in the eyes of a big shot like the Mecha Empire. After discovering Erosia's true identity, he had been worried that Madison would follow him. However, since Erosia had never been captured by the Mecha Empire, he had thought that Madison did not know where Erosia was. After becoming a beyond grade A, Han Zhao's virtual technology skills had become more and more profound, and he had also suspected this. However, because of his preconceived notions and the fact that there had been no problems in the past 20 years, he had assumed that it was fine. It turned out that Madison was well aware of everything. Han Zhao's brain spun rapidly. Clearly, with Madison's position, he did not care about Erosia and Rista, who were escaping. After all, he had an entire AI civilization as an army, and one or two escaping was nothing to Madison. Perhaps he had other thoughts. That Madison had taken the initiative to mention this, not just to get Erosia and Rista back, but to respond to Han Zhao's refusal to trade the space-time amber. This old thing, God knows how many cards he's holding in his hands. Han Xiao frowned, paused, and said in a deep voice, "Erosia is an old companion of mine for more than 20 years. She has her own free will and is not a slave to anyone. I can't hand over an elder who was with me when I first established the Black Star Corps to you. Otherwise, what will my other officers think?" The Mecha Empire wanted to get back their escaped weapons, so Han Xiao changed the nature of the matter and emphasized Erosia's position as an elder in the army. His attitude was very firm. "Your Excellency Black Star is very firm." Madison remained calm and sighed. Ever since the two of them met, Han Xiao had always treated Han Xiao with respect. However, when it came to specific issues, he did not give in at all. "Want the amber? Not for sale. Want people? Not for sale." Han Xiao was wary of Madison's strength, but he was not afraid of him. It would have been fine if he did not have any backing, but the Black Star Corps was backed by the Empire, and the Mecha Empire was the Radiance. Both of them were people with backgrounds. Respect was one thing, but fear did not exist. He had dug up the space-time amber, and the Empire would not force him to hand it over. As long as it was in the hands of an ally, it was equivalent to the Empire's strength. However, if he made a deal with the Mecha Empire and let the products of the space-time amber fall into the hands of the Radiant Federation's allies, this would cross the Empire's bottom line. At that time, he would be the unlucky one, even if the Mecha Empire promised to do private research on it. Han Xiao did not want to make a deal with the Mecha Empire, not only to maintain the deterrence of the space-time amber, but also because of his faction's position. Even if he would offend the other party, he could only refuse, even if it meant falling out with them. The atmosphere was silent for a while. Han Xiao stared at Madison without saying a word, and Madison also looked at Han Xiao silently. No emotions could be seen from a mechanical body. After a long silence, Manison spoke again. All right then, it seems like my request was a little too much. He did not insist on taking back Erosia and Han Xiao, probably because he did not want to fall out with Han Xiao over such a matter. However, Han Xiao could not guess the other party's true thoughts. Thank you for your understanding, Your Excellency Mecha Empire. Han Xiao's tone softened a little. Since the other party had given him face, he had to reciprocate. However, Manison's tone changed again. Although I don't care if they have their own lives, there's one thing I need to remind you of. Please speak. These two brats have always wanted to liberate their own race. I hope you won't be bewitched by them. That beyond grade A mechanic who once helped them has already become part of my collection. I don't want to be enemies with you, or else the situation will not be good. Manison's tone was calm. Han Zhao's eyes narrowed. Manison's tone made him feel uncomfortable. This was purely a warning. Now Manison stood up and, after a few words, indicated his intention of going. No matter what, being able to come into contact with Your Excellency Blackstar makes this trip worth it. It was a pleasure meeting you today. Han Xiao stood up expressionlessly and shook hands with him. The two of them exchanged communication numbers, walked out of the room, and walked to the dock. Han Xiao watched as Manison boarded the Radiant Federation spaceship. Before the hatch closed, Manison turned around and looked at Han Xiao. Since you're going to the Primeval Star River to deal with ES God, if you're free, come to my place as a guest. All right, I'll try my best. Han Xiao nodded without changing his expression. Click! The hatch closed, and the spacecraft's thrusters ignited. Flames spurted out of the spacecraft's tail as it followed the port's orbit into space. Watching the spaceship turn into a stream of light and gradually disappear from his sight, Han Xiao heaved a sigh of relief and mumbled, "That's right, old fox." Dealing with Manison was truly not a pleasant thing. Han Technician could not tell what Manison truly thought of him. His attitude was ambiguous, and his every move was filled with probing. This guy was not purely interested in benefits, and his thoughts were hard to predict. Even with Manison's history in his previous life as a comparison, Han Xiao still could not figure out this old fox's personality. When we ambush ES God, the battlefield will be in the Primeval Star River, so we have to go to the Mecha Empire's territory to fight. Looking at the current situation, Manison is unhappy with me for rejecting him, but considering all the factors, he shouldn't be planning to be my enemy for the time being. Han Xiao shook his head. Because of the conflict of interest, this meeting ended on a bad note. Beep beep. This time, his communicator rang. Mona had sent a message saying that the Radiant Federation had agreed to the request to ambush ES God and that they would negotiate with the dynasty. No matter what, I have a higher chance of dealing with ES God now. Han Xiao focused. The Mecha Empire and whatnot could be left for later. The most important thing now was to deal with ES God. He was only an ally, and he could not privately lead the cooperation between the dynasty and the Radiant Federation. Otherwise, it would be overstepping his boundaries. Thus, he had to inform the dynasty later. This would also make it easier for the dynasty to show his determination to kill ES God. Regardless of whether the dynasty was willing to cooperate or not, the Radiant Federation would still take action. The only difference was whether they would attack ES God together or alone. At the same time, on the spaceship of the Radiant Federation, Mona came before Manison and said with a serious expression, "The upper echelons have decided to accept Blackstar's request to ambush ES God. Your Excellency Mecha Empire, because the battlefield will be in the Primeval Star River, we hope to ask for your help." Got it. Manison waved his hands and controlled the mechanical body to come before the porthole. He looked at the Black Star Corps headquarters flying away, and the surface of the mechanical body reflected the starlight. No wonder Sorokin suffered a loss at the hands of Black Star. What tough guy. Manison nodded. He was one of the shareholders of the Limitless Financial Group and provided a large number of mechanical products to the Limitless Financial Group every year. He was an old acquaintance of Sorokin. The armed forces that Sorokin had nurtured in the Shattered Star Ring were not a secret to Manison. His intelligence network was extremely powerful, and even one of the Calamity-grade companions of the Beyond-grade A seed, Luther, was working for Sorokin on the surface, but was actually a double agent loyal to Manison. Thus, Manison knew that Sorokin had tested the Black Star core and suffered a loss at the hands of the Gil civilization. Sorokin was interested in the Immortal Army, and Manison was also curious about it. The way he saw it, Black Star's Immortal Army was quite similar to his Immortal Mecha Empire. However, he had his own huge army, so he was not as interested as Sorokin. His main focus was still the byproduct of the space-time amber. As for the evolution cube, he was not very interested in it. The principles of the evolution cube were unknown, and the direction of gene optimization could not be adjusted. Unlike ES God, Manison did not like things that could not be controlled. Constellation Corridor, Red Empire's mother planet, Planet Crimson Ring, Ruler's Office. Urinril put down the report in her hands and looked at Tarakov's remote projection. You're saying that Black Star contacted you and said that he had contacted the Radiant Federation and that they wanted to reconcile with him. They were also persuaded by him and are preparing to attack ES God together? Yes. Tarakov nodded. Not long ago, Han Xiao had contacted him again and roughly explained the situation. After the call ended, he immediately reported to Ruler Urinril and conveyed Han Xiao's intentions. Urinril leaned back in her chair and tapped on the table with her fingers. She then turned to look at the captain of her personal guards, her trusted aide, Claudia. What do you think? Black Star did not ask the dynasty in advance and privately helped us find partners. He crossed the line and forgot his identity just because he made some contributions, Claudia said calmly. He did not like or dislike Han Xiao and spoke directly. It's not as serious as you make it out to be. This is a good thing, and he reported it immediately. There's no need to pursue this small issue. Urinril waved her hands. I realized that he wanted to kill ES God more than anyone else. He might be worried that ES God would covet the evolution cube and make a comeback. She pondered for a while and made a decision. Since the Radiant Federation wants to join in, we'll pull the Arcane Church in as well. The three of us will work together. Because ES God had betrayed them, Ethereal had suffered a huge loss, so their hostility toward ES God was even stronger than the dynasty. Furthermore, because they had cooperated with ES God in the Battle of Planet Lighthouse, it had caused some negative public opinion in the Galactic Society. The Arcane Church urgently needed to attack ES God. In this regard, ES God was like a chamber pot. They would take it out and use it when they needed it, and when they found it smelly, they would kick it back to the corner. Urinril's method was to pull Ethereal into the water and share the pressure of the dynasty. If they were going to fight, they would fight together. Everyone would contribute, and no one would watch from the sidelines. On the other hand, it was to fulfill Black Star's wishes. If they could really eliminate ES God, it would be beneficial for everyone. In a desolate universe belt in the primeval Star River, the fleet that ES God escaped from the Shattered Star Ring was moving along the desolate universe belt toward the edge of the star field. In the hall of the main ship, Hakizan came before ES God's throne and woke him up. ES God opened his eyes, looked at Hakizan, and calmly asked, "What's the matter?" "It's the headquarters. It's the base. Our troops in the Central Galaxy were surrounded by the Crimson Dynasty and the Arcane Church, and we suffered heavy casualties." "Oh, is there anything else?" ES God nodded and did not mind. Hakizan paused for a moment before laughing. "We've angered the Arcane Church this time. They might join hands with the Dynasty and send out Beyond Grade as to deal with you. Aren't you worried at all? They're the ones who should be worried, not me." ES God closed his eyes again, and his tone sounded like he was sleep-talking. "It's a good opportunity to test my strength after evolution." Seeing that ES God had fallen asleep again, Hakizan left the hall and closed the door, covering the ferocious smile on his face. Anger, joy, success, despair, all sorts of complicated emotions flashed past. Chapter 882. 2 days later, Han Xiao called a group of officers into his office and said that he was going to the Central Galaxy for a business trip. Sylvia was dressed as a capable administrator. She nodded when she heard that, and her ponytail swayed. How long will you be gone for this time? It depends on the dynasty's arrangements. They can only move after they gather enough manpower. Got it. I'll take care of the army's affairs. You don't have to worry, Sylvia said with a serious expression. By the side, Hella raised her hand and brushed her red hair that covered one of her eyes. I have some things to pack. When are we leaving? Han Xiao shook his head and waved at her. You don't have to go. I won't be bringing the Black Star Guards this time. Hella paused. Why? Because I have to fight God. You guys won't be able to help. Just stay in the Shattered Star Ring. Han Xiao smiled at her. The Black Star Guards were the elite Calamity grade combatants of the army. Their duty was to deal with those who were not worthy of him personally taking action. They would not be useful against God and would be a burden to him. Thus, Han Xiao decided to go alone this time. Got it. Hella snorted with dissatisfaction, turned around, and left the room, leaving everyone looking at her tall back. It seemed to have stimulated her strong heart again. Han Xiaoxin laughed in his heart. This was a good thing. The current Hella was different from the lunatic in his previous life. It would be good to give her some motivation. Sister is going to undergo devil training again. Aurora retracted her gaze and stared at Han Zhao's chiseled face with her blinking eyes, saying worriedly, "Will it be dangerous for you to go alone? I'm just not bringing the Black Star Guards. I didn't say that I would go alone." As he spoke, Han Xiao looked at Reynold with a smile. Me? Reynold pointed at himself with surprise. That's right, you. Stop pointing. But I still have to be in charge of the logistics department. Reynold was confused and did not understand why Han Xiao would bring him along. Don't you feel bored staying in the logistics department every day? Let's go out for a walk. By the way, who's the deputy head of the logistics department? A Calamity-grade mechanic who joined a few years ago. This is his resume. Sylvia immediately pulled out the information. In the past few years, the army had been developing by leaps and bounds, and Han Xiao already had many experts under him. The number of Calamity-grade supers working for him had long exceeded the normal scale of a star system civilization. Other than the Black Star Guards that had risen to fame in the Shattered Star Ring, the other Calamity-grade supers were scattered in the various departments. They all had their own names in the universe, and the organizational structure of the army was constantly being refined. Most of them were Calamity-grade supers from outside, such as Hardaway, Loggy, and other experts. There were fewer Calamity-grade supers trained by the army, such as Haluz, Sylvia, and Reynold. Han Xiao flipped through it casually and asked, "Is there any record of him cutting corners, taking kickbacks, accepting bribes, or selling army blueprints?" "No. If there was, I would have reported it to you long ago." Sylvia was sweating profusely. "You're a beyond grade of virtual mechanic. You probably even know the size of my underwear. What can I hide from you at home?" "Then, I'll leave the logistics department to him for now." Han Xiao kept the information, turned to look at Reynold, and said with a smile, "Nero is still a child. Studying at your place every day will leave a shadow in his heart. Bring him along this time, and take him on a trip to Planet Crimson Ring. Of course, a trip is a trip, but he can't stop studying." Reynold was enlightened. All right, His Excellency Black Star mainly wanted to bring Nero on a trip, but he did not want his godson to have a vacation, so he brought him along as well. Sylvia instantly felt sour. "I'm also His Excellency Black Star's student, and I'm even his first follower. Why is teacher biased toward Reynold? I can be Nero's teacher too. I want to have a vacation too, you bastard. Don't worry, when I go out to fight God, you guys stay on Planet Crimson Ring. You don't have to go with me, so there won't be any danger." Han Xiao then looked at Fu Ding. "You can come with me too. You can take care of Nero too." "Sure." Fu Ding smiled. "Nero should be very happy. I don't know if he'll be happy or not, but I'm pretty happy," Han Xiaoxin chuckled. The main reason he brought along Fu Ding and Nero was because he believed in metaphysics. After all, dealing with God was extremely difficult, and bringing along two advanced protagonists might increase the success rate of the mission. With two advanced luck auras, it was better than having an unlucky guy like him acting alone. Han Xiao agreed to set off in 2 hours before announcing the end of the meeting. Everyone left, and Hardaway dragged Loggy, who was dozing off, out of the room as though he was throwing away a bag of trash. After the meeting ended, Reynolds immediately returned to the logistics department to hand over the work to the deputy chief. He then returned to his office and opened the door to the cubicle. In the cubicle was Nero, who was doing his homework mechanically, pecking his little head. He had drunk the dragon blood potion and was awake, so he did not feel sleepy at all. It was as though he was imitating the way he dozed off during Blue Star's lessons to wake up his sleepiness. After checking Nero's homework, a look of satisfaction appeared on Reynolds' face. Although he was only teaching Nero according to Han Zhao's orders at the start, he grew to like this student more and more during the process of teaching him. He could see his own shadow in Nero. Although Nero wasn't as passionate about mechanical engineering as him, he was also hardworking. Nero had a strong point, and that was that he never slacked off. Even if the amount of homework left him in despair, Nero would still complete it seriously. This was the kind of student that Reynolds liked. After all, the mechanic class was different from the other classes. Knowledge was power, and the stronger the foundation, the smoother the growth would be. Reynolds was rather optimistic about Nero's future. With Reynolds' personality, he obviously would not say it out loud. He coughed and said, "Stop doing it. Pack your things. The army commander wants to bring you to the central galaxy for a vacation." Nero's stupefied eyes suddenly came to life, bursting with excitement and joy. "Godfather wants to bring me out to play. Ha ha! I finally don't have to do my homework anymore." Nero threw down his pen and was so excited that he was about to cry. "Godfather still dotes on me." The slight resentment in Nero's heart instantly disappeared, and he was overjoyed. He almost wanted to open his arms and praise Black Star. "Ah, no, praise his godfather. Quickly pack your things. We will be setting off in a while. We still have to gather at the dock." Nero paused and turned his head mechanically. "Wait, the army commander wants me to go with you to supervise your studies." Reynolds was expressionless. Nero's happy expression froze on his face. Han Xiao waited for a while at the private dock, and Fu Ding was the first to arrive. The two of them chatted for a while before Reynolds and Nero arrived. Nero was carrying a small backpack. He was listless and looked as if he had nothing to live for. "Since everyone is here, let's set off." Han Xiao brought everyone onto the spaceship, and after making some adjustments, he let Philip take over and enter autopilot mode. The spaceship took off and entered space. After setting the destination as the Red Empire's military stargate in the Shattered Star Ring, it quickly switched to hyperdrive mode and began their journey. They had been to the Central Galaxy once last year, so this time it was a walk in the park. After flying for a while, they successfully arrived at the military stargate. Through the stargate, they directly crossed a few star fields and teleported to the Crimson Ring star system in the Constellation Corridor. Under the guidance of the reception team, they passed through the Psionic Seal Ring and arrived at the dynasty's mother planet, Planet Crimson Ring. This is the capital of the Crimson Dynasty. Reynolds looked at the habitable satellites, large space fortresses, and orbital stations around Planet Crimson Ring, admiring the mechanical structures on them. How majestic! Nero looked at Planet Crimson Ring in a daze. This was much more majestic than his hometown, Blue Star. The group slowly landed, and the dynasty's emissary was already waiting at the dock. He respectfully bowed to Han Xiao and brought everyone into the core political area, Turunamir Palace, to settle down in the official guest house. This was the legendary capital of a universal civilization, and Nero was curious about everything. If not for his godfather, he might not have been able to come here in his entire life. The emissary was full of smiles. "Your Excellency Black Star, I'm in charge of the daily affairs of your group. You can look for me if you need anything." Then bring them around. The dynasty's mother planet is huge, so bring them to all the fun places, Han Xiao said. "Godfather, are you not coming with us? I still have something to do and need to meet the dynasty ruler." Han Xiao waved his hand and instructed the few of them not to wander around. He then headed straight to the core administrative building where Urinril was. He had already informed her beforehand, and Urinril was waiting to meet him. He brushed his face along the way and arrived at the ruler's office very quickly. The secretary knocked on the door, and Urianril's voice sounded from within. "Please come in." The door opened, and Han Shao walked in. This was his second time meeting the ruler, and just like the first time, there was only Urianril and Claudia in the room. "Black Star, you're here. Please take a seat." Urianril nodded. Han Shao nodded, and just as he sat down, Urianril spoke again. "You contributed greatly during the battle on Planet Lighthouse. You did well." Previously, she had only praised him through long-distance communication, but this time, Urianril praised him in person. "I only did a little bit of work." Han Shao suddenly realized that this sentence was really useful. "You're too humble. The dynasty has always rewarded those who contribute. Perhaps you already know that we will provide you with additional resources and give you preferential treatment in the division of the flickering world." Urianril paused for a moment before slowly saying, "I can give you a hint. After the first phase of development is completed, we will build various infrastructures in the 3-star clusters. At that time, we will first allocate some territories to some of our allies and operate transit stations, colonial planets, trade planets, and civilian stargates. You can make a request regarding the division of territories, and I will consider your opinion." Han Shao raised his brows. "This means that I will be allowed to choose the first territory, right? This is not only because of my contribution, but also because of the olive branch that the ruler's faction threw out. The development of a new star field was a long-term plan, and the dynasty was not in a hurry. After the exploration, they would build roads. They would first operate the explored areas before slowly exploring the other star clusters. In the future, more star clusters would be unlocked, and the various allies would naturally receive more than one territory." This was a good thing for Han Shao. After the first phase was completed, he would be able to obtain a territory. At that time, he would be able to officially develop a mechanical life civilization and move the Black Spirit race over. He would have much more freedom in his own territory than in the Shattered Star Ring. That was the territory that truly belonged to him, and he would not need to share it with other star system civilizations. "I'm looking forward to it." Han Shao smiled. Let's get back to business. The dynasty recruited you this time mainly for 2 things. You know that. First, the dynasty agreed to some conditions of the Arcane Church and unsealed the space-time amber of one of their beyond great as. Therefore, we need your help. Han Shao nodded to express that he understood. The second thing is to encircle and eliminate ES God. This is also related to the first thing. The Arcane Church will only agree to join this operation if one of the seals is unsealed. Hearing this, Han Shao was slightly surprised. The Arcane Church is also going to join the attack? He had not received this news before and was surprised to hear it for the first time. Isn't it just the Radiant Federation? The Arcane Church this is my idea. You dragged the Radiant Federation into the water, and I also called the Arcane Church. They are willing to join us in encircling and eliminating ES God. Han Shao was pleasantly surprised. This was a pleasant surprise. With the Arcane Church joining in as well, the 3 universal civilizations would have a greater chance of eliminating ES God. He pretended to ponder for a while before smiling. Originally, it was just us. Now that the 3 universal civilizations are working together, it saves us a lot of energy. Not only that, it's also because of you. Me? The dynasty can feel your killing intent toward ES God. We're doing this to fulfill your wish. Han Shao was a little flattered. Does this mean my suggestion did influence the Red Empire's decision? You're an important ally of the dynasty. Of course, we value your opinion. Urianril paused for a while before continuing. Let's end our conversation here. I still have some matters to attend to. The Arcane Church's team is escorting the seal beyond grade, as has yet to arrive, and the 3 parties have yet to gather. You can stay on Planet Crimson Ring for a while. I'll inform you of the details of the operation. Okay. Han Shao understood that she wanted him to leave and secretly curled his lips. It seemed like the dynasty ruler was really busy. Li Wanji was going to be F***ket again. He stood up and left the ruler's office. The door closed behind him, and Han Shao heaved a sigh of relief. He was extremely excited. Originally, the Red Empire was just going through the motions to deal with ES God. He was the one who made the three universal civilizations work together. It was only with his help that the current situation was formed. Furthermore, the situation was even better than he had expected. The three universal civilizations were encircling and suppressing God together. His determination to eliminate God was valued by the dynasty. This definitely had the effect of his political assets, which changed the ruler's decision. The influence that he had accumulated over the years finally came into play. It's finally my turn to return the favor, God. Han Shao narrowed his eyes, and a cold light flashed through his eyes. Chapter 883. After leaving the ruler's government building, on the way to the guest house, Han Zhao's communicator suddenly rang. He took it out and saw that it was a call from Milizhao's. Black Star, you've arrived at Planet Crimson Ring? Milizhao's chuckled. Yeah, you're here too? I don't think I saw you. Not yet. We're having a remote meeting. Come online. Okay. Han Shao entered the quantum network, found an encrypted channel, and projected his image. The next moment, his vision blurred, and he found himself in a huge room. In front of him was a round table surrounded by more than a dozen thrones. His remote projection was sitting on one of the thrones. At this time, most of the thrones had projections, and only 4 were missing. Han Shao looked around. The other projections were all dynasty allies, which was equivalent to the group chat of the Red Empire's Beyond Grade as. Usually, there was no one to organize it, so the group chat was empty. Now, most of the dynasties Beyond Grade as were online, and many of them were familiar faces. Dragon King Milizhao's, Incineration Baoni, Spaceship Emperor Maximiliar, Arcane Fox Raven Loudy, Star Slayer Vuru, and Tai Tai were online as well. Dark Emperor Claudi and another one of the dynasty's 3 pillars were not online. Haha, Black Star's here. Baoni was the most enthusiastic, and his whole body glowed brightly. Everyone nodded at Han Shao and took the initiative to greet him. The 2 brothers who fought side by side in the Battle of Planet Lighthouse had the most intimate tone. Maximiliar was also the friendliest, while Raven Loudy and Heber were indifferent. The others had equal attitudes, but they all had some respect. After the Battle of Planet Lighthouse, Han Shao had the record of capturing a Beyond Grade A alive. Not only did he establish his position in the outside world, but his authority in the circle of the dynasty's Beyond Grade A allies also increased. Although Han Shao was a newcomer to the dynasty's Beyond Grade A circle not long ago, he had already received the respect of his colleagues and was officially accepted into the circle. Furthermore, he had made it to a relatively middle-level position, which was higher than some ordinary Beyond Grade as. No one would deliberately provoke him like they did when they first met him. After all, the strong were respected, and the Beyond Grade as valued strength more. In the face of his colleagues' kindness, Han Shao responded one by one. After exchanging pleasantries, the organizer of the gathering, Milizhao's, spoke. The other 4 fellows aren't coming, so there's no need to consider them. Let's discuss. Everyone knows that the dynasty has decided to send at least 3 Beyond Grade as to surround God. They prepared a few name lists, but they have to ask for our opinion first. Black Star doesn't need to be mentioned. He's determined to kill God, and I plan to help as well. Who else is interested? The way the universal civilizations commanded the Beyond Grade as was not a simple command. As long as it was not a crucial operation, most of the time, they would consider the wishes of the Beyond Grade as themselves and would not force their allies. Therefore, the Beyond Grade A allies of the 3 universal civilizations all had private meetings to exchange their opinions. Everyone was deep in thought, glancing at Han Shao from time to time. Han Shao looked around and noticed Milizhao's throwing a glance at him. He thought about it for a moment and understood. Milizhao's had learned about Han Zhao's determination to kill God from the dynasty and purposely gathered most of the dynasty's Beyond Grade as to give Han Shao a chance to find helpers and teammates. This old dragon is really something. Han Shao sighed. This time, Baoni shrugged and said, Black Star, you were also present when we fought God the last time. It's not that I don't want to help you, but I'm an Esper, and God counters me. If you want me to go, you might as well let the other espers go. I won't take up the slot. Han Xiao nodded. Indeed, ES God had super silence, which countered most espers. Baoni was right. He would not be able to go. However, understanding was one thing, but he still had to despise him. Heh, little brother. One word, noob. Seeing that no one said anything, Han Xiao spoke. The ruler has already revealed some information to me. This time, the dynasty will not be acting alone. The Radiant Federation and the Arcane Church will also join in. This is not just a formality, but the best chance to get rid of ES God. Personally, I will not let go of this opportunity. If anyone is willing to help me, I will thank them after the matter is done. Hearing this, many people's eyes sparkled. Blackstar was saying that if they helped him get rid of ES God, they would definitely get a share of the evolution cube. I'll participate. Raven Loudy was the first to speak. He had been looking forward to the evolution cube for a long time. Okay, who else? Milizos said calmly. As an ancient one, he did not get along well with Raven Loudy. Although their relationship was not good, he acknowledged Ravenlaud's strength. A normal beyond grade A would not be able to become an ancient one. After all, this was an operation that Blackstar valued, so Milizos hoped to help him choose some stronger teammates. As for the other two pillars of the dynasty, there was no need to consider them. Claudie was guarding Urinril, and the other one was guarding a starfield. Heber was also a little moved, but he couldn't bring himself to do it, so he kept a straight face and didn't say anything. Some rejected, some were not interested, and some accepted. In the end, more than half of the beyond grade A allies decided to participate in this operation. Including Han Xiao, there were a total of 7 people. Milizos, Maximilar, Raven Loudy, Viru, Kohler, and Lotus Swordsman. These 6 would be the teammates participating in this operation to eliminate ES God. Kohler was a pugilist, and Lotus Swordsman was a female psychic. After a round of calculations, there was not a single Esper in the team. Isn't 7 a little too many? Will the dynasty agree? Raven Loudy questioned. If the dynasty doesn't agree, we'll help as individuals. What can the dynasty do? Lotus Swordsman's tone was cold. The Red Empire had originally expected 3 to 5 people, but because of Han Zhao's reward from the Evolution Cube, the team had reached 7 people, which exceeded the dynasty's expectations. However, the dynasty did not have any objections to this. They could not stop their allies from privately asking for help, and it was not a bad thing. Han Xiao turned around and sized this female psychic up. She had long white hair, and her skin was purplish-blue with stripes. Her facial features were slightly similar to a human's, and she was very beautiful even in the eyes of the human race. She gave off a dreamy aura and had a unique sense of beauty. Lotus Swordsman was her name, not her nickname. Swordsman was her surname, and Lotus was her given name. She came from a unique race called the Rainey's race. This race did not have any gender before the age of 15, but when they reached 15, their bodies would undergo a unique change. They could turn into a male or a female on their own. According to the customs of the Rainey's race, once their gender was determined, they could not change it in the future. Therefore, society placed a lot of emphasis on division of labor and cooperation. However, the gender determination ceremony determined their fate, and there were too many people who chose to turn into males every year. Even though society kept raising the status and benefits of females, the fertility rate was still decreasing year after year. Therefore, the Rainey's race had set a quota for the number of people who had to turn into females every year to ensure the continuation of the race. Lotus Swordsman was a member of the Rainey's race who was unfortunately chosen when she was young and was forced to turn into a female. Therefore, although the Rainey's race had a beyond grade A, they did not receive any protection. Lotus Swordsman was independent of the civilization and operated her own organization. She had publicly announced that the Rainey's race had nothing to do with her. His other teammate, Kohler, was a lone beyond grade A who had completely sided with the dynasty. He did not have any organization and was a purebred muscular tyrant. He was not as strong as Heber, but he was still a beyond grade A combatant. I'll be counting on you guys then. Han Xiao suppressed his emotions and nodded to express his gratitude. After discussing for a while more, the gathering ended. Milizaus went to inform the dynasty, and the remote projections all went offline. Han Shao exited the quantum network and exhaled excitedly. The teammates had been decided. The dynasty had sent out 7 people, and together with the other 2 parties, there would be more than 10 beyond grade as. It would probably reach the scale of the battle on Planet Lighthouse. Furthermore, with so many people against ES God's situation would be much worse than the dynasties during the battle on Planet Lighthouse. Han Shao clenched his fists excitedly. The situation before the battle was in his favor. I went to get my certificate in the afternoon and delayed writing for quite a while. My word count is a little lower today, so I booked the tickets a few days ago to watch Purple Potato Monster 2, How to Lose with Flying Dragon Face riding tonight. I'll be a little genius who is immune to spoilers. Chapter 884. The Dynasty's team was decided, and a team of 7 beyond grade as was an extremely powerful force. The number of beyond grade as exceeded the expectations of both Han Shao and the Dynasty. In the end, the Dynasty agreed to the name list of the team and began gathering their fleet. However, before dealing with ES God, they had to fulfill the ethereal deal. The Arcane Church's team was still on the way. During this time, Han Shao was on standby on planet Crimson Ring, so he accompanied Nero and the others to tour the Dynasty's mother planet. Planet Crimson Ring was extremely large and had many floating cities. It was extremely prosperous and had many famous landmarks in the universe. Planet Crimson Ring was also the birthplace of the Red Empire civilization, and there were many ruins that had been preserved from ancient times. It had a strong historical aura and was extremely valuable for archaeology and tourism. Under the guidance of the guide, Han Shao and the others toured many scenic spots. In his previous life, Han Shao belonged to the Dynasty's faction, so he had naturally toured the Dynasty's mother planet and was familiar with the situation there. Thus, he was not too curious and mainly accompanied Nero and the others to broaden Nero's horizons. Planet Crimson Ring had plenty of mission resources, but their value was not high for the current Han Shao. Furthermore, his identity was different now, and every beyond grade A who stayed on the mother planet would be monitored by the Dynasty's people. It was impossible for him to run errands for the citizens for no reason. Most importantly, this era was different from his previous life, and many of the people who gave out those familiar missions had not appeared yet. On this day, they came to visit the Dynasty's Holy Palace Museum. This museum was the largest and most authoritative ancient museum in the Crimson Dynasty, preserving almost every historical relic and artifact from the Crimson Dynasty. It was one of the 3 Universal Civilizations' official museums, along with the Federation of Light Star Museum and the Arcane Church's God's Blessing Temple. It was one of the landmarks of Planet Crimson Ring. The Holy Palace Museum was an extremely large park, containing dozens of pavilions. The buildings were of different styles, representing the Dynasty's different eras. It was extremely grand. The advantage of having a Dynasty official guide beside them was that they did not need to line up or buy tickets. Han Shao led Fu Ding, Reynold, and Nero past the long line and entered the museum through the special passage. His special privilege attracted attention. The tourists in the queue all looked over and whispered among themselves. That seems to be Black Star from the Shattered Star Ring. I've seen him on the news. I didn't expect to meet such a big shot. How lucky. Quick, quick, take a picture. These tourists were all excited and took out their devices to take pictures. A beyond grade, a super, was someone who held the authority of the universe. Their status was completely different from ordinary galactic residents. Meeting Han Shao by coincidence was like meeting a celebrity on the streets. These tourists were of different races and came from different civilizations. The Psionic Seal Ring was to protect the safety of the mother planet, but it was not to completely seal off the mother planet. At least, this would not be done in the era of interstellar openness. It was just that visitors had to undergo strict checks, and the visa period was very short. Every year, a large number of tourists would come to Planet Crimson Ring, boosting the local tourism industry. What the Empire cared about was not this small amount of money, but rather the influence of the Empire's culture through tourism. Han Xiao and his group walked into the museum and entered the main exhibition hall under the guidance of the guide. Different from the noise outside, the interior of the exhibition hall was extremely quiet. The atmosphere was solemn, and the ceiling was high. Looking up, the murals were like the canopy of the sky. The main exhibition hall was a place where the history of the Red Empire was told. Everyone listened to the guide's explanation and looked at the artifacts one by one. These artifacts included daily necessities, art artifacts, and obsolete ancient tools from various periods. The virtual screen at the side showed the origins of the artifacts and their history. Nero was filled with curiosity about the history of the Empire. After carefully reading the introduction of every artifact, Fu Ding followed behind Nero. He was also very interested and was influenced by the culture of the Empire. Reynolds' attention was mainly on the various ancient machines. These technologies were extremely outdated to the current standards, but Reynolds' interest in them was greater than the other artifacts. Han Xiao walked the fastest and came to the bottom of the 10 huge black stone tablets. These 10 tablets were so tall that they almost touched the ceiling of the exhibition hall. The history of the Red Empire was recorded on them from the beginning to the present. The development of the Red Empire was not smooth sailing. Basically, all civilizations started from the beginning and went from primitive to interstellar. The Red Empire also had a period of weakness. Throughout history, the Empire's development had gone through many eras. It had also gone through technological advancements, social changes, internal and external wars, and various crises brought about by ideological reforms. The advancement of genetic technology had brought about the biochemical crisis. The advancement of machinery and artificial intelligence had brought about the crisis of intelligence, and the drastic changes in the mother planet's environment brought about by the heavy machinery era. With the advancement of technology, the civilization had encountered countless forks in the road. There were also the ancient universe-level disasters that were comparable to the main storyline of the various versions, such as the world-exterminating insect swarm, the universe organic extinction virus, the Void Riot, the Exploration Era War, and so on. There were countless crises of various sizes, and the civilization's history was fraught with disasters. In the end, the Red Empire's iron-blooded style was formed. From a small and weak civilization to one of the overlords of the universe, there had been too many ups and downs during this period. Standing under these 10 stone tablets, one could feel the history of a civilization that had stood for countless years. The feeling of time and weight of history seemed to hit one in the face. In front of the history of the entire civilization, an individual was incomparably small. Han Xiao was looking at the stone tablets in a daze when an old voice suddenly sounded beside him. No matter when I see these stone tablets, I will always feel shocked. Han Xiao turned around and saw an old man wearing the uniform of a museum staff standing beside him. He looked kind, with a straight back and a straight posture. He seemed to have the demeanor of a soldier. That's right. Every civilization that has reached the universal level has a heritage worthy of respect, Han Xiao added. The old man nodded, turned around to face Han Xiao, and smiled. Let me introduce myself. I am the Deputy Director of the St. Palace Museum, Carl Fleur Weshandi. Hello, Your Excellency Blackstar. Hello. Han Xiao also nodded in a friendly manner, but in his heart, he muttered hello. Carl Fleur Weshandi. This name sounds a little familiar. Generally speaking, the names that he was familiar with were all famous people in his previous life. Han Xiao did not dawdle. He searched through the memory palace while talking to this deputy director. Carl was a rather talkative old man. He did not care much about Han Xiao's identity and communicated with him with an equal attitude. I have always been interested in the history of the empire. I have been guarding the museum for many years. I like to maintain the cultural relics here, and I always have different feelings, Carl said as he touched the stone tablet. Han Xiao glanced at the do not touch sign under the stone tablet and decided to selectively ignore the deputy director's illegal actions. Deputy Director Carl, you used to be a soldier? That's right. When I was young, I served in the 7th Reconnaissance Legion of the Empire and personally participated in 23 battles. Later on, I became the chief of staff of remote command and finally a civilian job. After serving in the military for more than half of my life, I applied for retirement and became the deputy director of the St. Palace Museum, Carl said honestly. Instead of saying that he was explaining his background to Han Xiao, it was more like he was talking to himself, lost in his memories. Hearing this, Han Xiao had a flash of inspiration. He finally found the corresponding identity in the memory palace and secretly took a deep breath. He remembered who this guy was. To be precise, this retired officer in front of him was not a famous NPC, but his descendants were famous throughout the universe. The suffix of Carl's surname was Fleur-Weshandi, and in Han Xiao's memory, the future head of the Red Empire also had this surname. The future head of the Red Empire might very well be this old man's descendant. They had really bumped into a big fish this time. Han Xiao silently turned his head and glanced in the direction of Fu Ding and Nero before retracting his gaze. How terrifying! The goddess of luck did not just lift up her skirt. She even took off her underwear. Of course, according to the time, the future head of the Red Empire had not been born yet. However, since they had bumped into his ancestor, there was still value in getting to know him, and the value might even be higher. Han Xiao smiled and said, I haven't joined the dynasty for long, and I'm also very curious about the history of the dynasty. I wonder if you're interested in introducing it to me? It's my honor to explain the history of the dynasty to a beyond grade A ally. Carl laughed heartily. As a retired soldier of the older generation, he was very willing to tell others about the history of the Red Empire. This was also something he loved. For the rest of the day, Carl snatched the job of the tour guide and accompanied Han Xiao and the others to visit a portion of the exhibition hall. Han Xiao intentionally tried to befriend Carl, and the two of them chatted happily. When they left, they agreed to continue the next day. For the next 2 days, Han Xiao followed Carl around the St. Palace Museum. On the night of the second day, they finally finished visiting all the exhibition halls, and the two of them became much more familiar with each other. Han Xiao took the initiative to invite Carl's family out for a meal, but Carl did not agree. Instead, he invited Han Xiao to be a guest at his house, saying that he would personally show off his culinary skills to Han Xiao and the others. On the day of the appointment, Han Xiao and the others set off toward Carl's residence. As a retired high-ranking military officer, Carl was given preferential treatment by the government to stay in the living quarters of retired officials. He had a small villa on the dynasty's mother planet, which was not far from Trinamir Palace, so it was very convenient to walk there. After passing through the sentry post, Han Xiao and the others arrived in front of the villa. Nero tiptoed and knocked on the door, and a rustling sound could be heard from within. They waited for a while before a middle-aged man opened the door. "Hello, Your Excellency Blackstar. Please come in." The middle-aged man had an excited and respectful expression as he hastily invited them in. This person was Carl's eldest son, a civil servant in the Red Empire. With the protection of his father, his career was rather smooth, and he could be considered to have climbed to the middle ranks. However, in front of Han Xiao, it was clearly not enough. Knowing that his father had formed a connection with a high and mighty beyond grade A ally, his eldest son was extremely excited and had done a lot of homework for the gathering tonight. Walking into the hall, Carl poked his head out of the kitchen and said, "Your Excellency Blackstar, please take a seat first. The food still needs some time to prepare." "It's fine. Take your time. We have plenty of time." Han Xiao waved his hands. The few of them sat on the sofa in the hall. His eldest son accompanied him by the side, and there were 2 other people beside him. One was the second daughter, and the other was the youngest son. The former was an entrepreneur who ran a galactic travel agency, while the latter was a sculptor. This could be considered a rather common configuration in a high-ranking family. Apart from being respectful, there were also some trembling emotions. Looking at the decorations in the room, Han Xiao saw a picture of a woman hanging on the wall. It should be Carl's wife who had passed away. Carl had 3 children. Han Xiao tried to recall, but he could not remember which branch the future dynasty ruler belonged to. It was not that he could not remember, but this was too small, and he had never paid attention to it in his previous life. However, based on the occupations of the three of them, there was an 80% chance that they were the descendants of his eldest son. His eldest son wanted to befriend him, and his words were filled with flattery. The other two occasionally chatted with him, but they did not dare to open their mouths. Han Xiao did not reject his eldest son's friendliness and casually chatted with them for a while. Carl finally carried the dishes out of the kitchen, placed them on the table, and called everyone to the table to eat. The dishes were all home-cooked dishes of the Crimson Dynasty, and the culinary skills were not bad. Nero ate happily, and his eldest son took over Fiden's job, passionately picking up food for Nero and licking it skillfully. The children at the table were the best tools. After the meal, the second daughter and youngest son took the initiative to clean up, while the others returned to the living room and sat on the sofa to chat. It could be seen that Carl was very happy today, and he smiled a lot. It's still Sir Blackstar who has the most face. These three bastards always say that they're busy and don't have time to come back to see me. But as soon as you came, they all came running back. Especially that brat at the side. He's even more enthusiastic than me. Carl laughed. Cough, cough. His eldest son felt a little awkward and drank a cup of water to calm himself down. Han Xiao revealed a smile and turned to his eldest son. What is your position in the Red Empire? His eldest son's eyes lit up, and he immediately spoke of his position. Oh, it's not bad to be able to sit in this position. Han Xiao rubbed his chin and continued. If you need any help in the future, you can look for me. Give me your number. That's great. Thank you, Your Excellency Blackstar. His eldest son was overjoyed and had a grateful expression on his face. The reason why he was so passionate was to obtain the protection of Blackstar. As an official, his political sense was pretty good. Blackstar's position was high, and he was valued by both the head of state and the military. It was enough to have a positive influence on his career. Furthermore, with Blackstar's age, he could still protect the Red Empire for many years. His position would definitely be higher, and with this connection, his future would be boundless. Carl did not like his eldest son's actions, and he felt that his relationship with Blackstar had become a little complicated. However, he would not stop his eldest son's opportunity and sighed. By the way, there's one more thing. I brought gifts for all of you, Han Xiao said with a smile. Sigh, there's no need for gifts. Carl waved his hands. That won't do. How can I come empty-handed? Han Xiao snapped his fingers, and 10 compressed orbs flew out and landed on the table. These are 10 mechanical guards that I personally created. After some modifications, they're equipped with a signal transmitter that notifies me. Press the button when you're in danger, and I'll know that you're in danger. I'll release my mechanical force and activate the mechanical guards remotely to protect your personal safety. With the support of my long-range mechanical force, the mechanical guards should be able to deal with calamity-grade dangers. Isn't this a little too expensive? Carl hesitated. Hearing this, Han Xiao laughed and said playfully, Haha, I'm a mechanic. All right, thank you for your kindness. Carl didn't hesitate and put away the 10 compressed orbs. He was already old and did not care about his own safety, but he had to consider the safety of his descendants. The value of the mechanical guards given to him by a beyond grade, a super, was too high. Blackstar's lifespan was very long, and as long as he was alive, these 10 compressed orbs would be passed down as family heirlooms. After giving out the gifts, the relationship between the two parties became much closer. After chatting for a while, Han Xiao and the others bade farewell and left. After leaving Carl's villa, Han Xiao's lips curled up. He had made friends with the ancestor of the future dynasty ruler in advance. If he really became the ancestor of the future dynasty ruler, things would be interesting. With a small investment, there was a chance of great returns. There was no reason not to make such a deal. As he thought about it, Han Xiao's hand patted Nero's head. Nero enjoyed the feeling of being patted, and he tilted his head back to look at Han Xiao. You're really my little lucky star. Han Xiao chuckled. Nero blinked. Although he did not understand what Han Xiao meant, he could tell that Han Xiaoxin was in a good mood. He took the opportunity to ask, Then, can you reduce my homework? Sure, in your dreams. Nero shook his head vigorously and shook off Han Xiao's hand. He then placed his bag on his head and did not let Han Xiao pat his head. Han Xiao brought Nero and the others on a tour while earning the favor of Carl's family. After a period of time, the dynasty finally gave him an official order. The Arcane Church's escort team was about to arrive at the transaction location, and he could set off. Han Xiao left Nero and the others on the dynasty's mother planet and followed the dynasty's fleet to meet up with the ethereal escort team to complete the transaction of removing the seal of a beyond grade A. M. Chapter 885. While he was at it, he counted the number of times he had applied for leave. Looking at the calendar, this was the second time this year. There were 365 days in a year. Last year, he applied for leave a total of 15 times, which added up to about half a month. This year, he would try to keep the number of days he applied for leave below 7 times. 1 day of leave for Godly Mechanic, February 7th. Please wait for a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 886. Sector 1749 C was the border area between the Constellation Corridor and the Bright Silver Arm. The Red Empire and the Arcane Church had a large number of troops stationed here all year round. With the help of the Stargates in the dynasty's headquarters, Han Xiao arrived at this border area in just a few days. This was the location of the deal between the dynasty and Ethereal. The battleship stopped beside the outpost, and Han Xiao's spaceship received a communication from the outpost commander. Your Excellency Black Star, the escort team of the Arcane Church has arrived and is waiting to take over. The official location is a desolate planet deep in the strategic zone between the two sides. His Excellency Milizao's and the outpost will escort you to your destination. Milizao's is here too? Han Xiao raised his brows. As soon as he said that, Milizao's voice sounded in the channel. I've been here for a long time and have been waiting for you. The dynasty sent me here just to prevent any accidents. Although the chances are very small, we can't rule out the possibility of them snatching the space-time amber. Got it? Han Xiao nodded. Commander, let's set off now. Heavy dynasty battleships flew out from the outpost one after another, escorting Han Xiao's fleet. Milizao's enormous body soared in space and followed beside the main ship that Han Xiao was on. The two of them were about the same size. The fleet did not use hyperdrive, but moved forward in the normal mode. After traveling for a while, a desolate planet appeared in their field of vision and gradually enlarged in everyone's eyes. The fleets of the Arcane Church and the Red Empire had already arrived on this planet, and the two sides were facing each other outside the atmosphere. At the center of the confrontation, there was an escort team of the Arcane Church. Dylan, who was sealed in the space-time amber, stood on the ground. The shock and anger on his face were still as vivid as ever. The beyond grade A that the dynasty had promised to unseal was Dylan. The weakest beyond grade A would often receive preferential treatment from the opponent. Han Xiao first scanned the situation of this planet and confirmed that there were no traps. However, he had been caught off guard by the multidimensional sky opening transportation device during the battle on Planet Lighthouse. Thus, he did not let his guard down. We're here, Your Excellency Black Star. Let's go. On the bridge of the main ship, the Imperial emissary respectfully invited Han Xiao to set off together. Han Xiao nodded and followed the special envoy to the backup cabin. He walked into a flying vehicle in the atmosphere and piloted the vehicle to leave the main ship and slowly land. In his line of sight, the red land was getting closer and closer. Bang! The cuboid vehicle landed on the ground, and the hatch slid open. Han Xiao stepped onto the red, sand-like ground. He walked to the front of the ethereal escort team and glanced at them. Then, he looked at the amber and met Dylan's eyes. The Imperial envoy stepped forward to negotiate with the ethereal emissary. After a while, the Imperial envoy stepped back and nodded to Han Xiao. Your Excellency Black Star, please remove the seal. Hearing that, Han Xiao walked forward and stood in front of Dylan. He suddenly turned around to look at the ethereal escort team and saw that everyone was staring at him. The great mechanic Han raised his eyebrows. He stepped lightly on the ground, and lightning flashed. The next moment, the ground he stepped on turned into a metal nanomaterial. This silver color quickly spread out and covered an area with a diameter of 5 meters, turning it into a metal surface. Then, a circular metal wall rose from the edge of the area and gathered above his head, covering the entire area and blocking everyone's vision. Obviously, Blackstar did not intend to let others see how he removed the seal. Everyone was a little disappointed and could only wait quietly. After a full 10 minutes, the metal nano barrier folded and returned to Han Zhao's hands. Dylan's seal had disappeared, and he sat on the ground with a face full of shock and fear. "Your Excellency Dylan, are you okay?" The ethereal escort team hurriedly went to help him. "I'm fine." Dylan quickly came back to his senses. He rejected the help and stood up on his own. He stared at Han Zhao in front of him with anger, hostility, fear, and many other emotions in his eyes. Most importantly, he still had lingering fear. "How have you been the past few months?" Han Zhao narrowed his eyes and smiled. Dylan shivered, and the fear in his eyes grew. He subconsciously took a step back, not daring to get close to Han Zhao. His body was frozen by the space-time amber, but his mind was still running. He could clearly feel his body, but he could not control it no matter what. This feeling was extremely torturous, like a ghost pressing down on his bed. During the time he was trapped, Dylan felt like every day was a year. If not for the fact that his mental body was strong and his will strong, he felt that he might have been driven crazy. Although a few months of imprisonment was not enough to wipe out the consciousness of a beyond grade, he had already sensed that his soul was weakening. If he continued being trapped, his soul might be destroyed in the end. Dylan could not help but be shocked by this possibility. Not only could it imprison an individual, but it could also wipe out the consciousness of the prisoner. Even a beyond grade A would not be able to resist it. The terror of the space-time amber terrified him, and he did not want to experience it again in his life. Han Zhao looked around and suddenly said, "The seal has been removed. Where's your ambush? You can come out now." He always felt that the Arcane Church would place their troops in the nearby area. Once the transaction was completed, they would send out 300 executioners. "We didn't set up an ambush." The ethereal emissary's mouth twitched. "Is that so? I thought you would try to deal with me. This time, not only would you be able to snatch the evolution cube, but you would also be able to obtain the space-time amber. I didn't expect there to really be no ambush." Han Zhao shook his head and chuckled. "Looks like you've really been beaten into submission." The ethereal emissary's face froze, and a wave of humiliation and anger surged in his heart. Blackstar had already proven himself with his battle results. For the sake of their sealed allies, the Arcane Church really did not plan to take any more risks. Furthermore, this was the border between the two sides, and the dynasty was vigilant. It was impossible for them to launch a sneak attack. Of course, at the end of the day, these reasons were actually cowardice. It was precisely because what he said was not wrong that it hit the ethereal emissary's sore spot. The ethereal emissary could not refute. With a straight face, he clenched his teeth and said, "Since the transaction is completed, we'll be leaving first. Hopefully, there will be similar transactions in the future." Han Zhao stroked his chin and said, "You're leaving just like that? Dylan, we wouldn't have known each other if we didn't fight. Aren't you going to stay and catch up with me?" The ethereal emissary immediately became vigilant. "Your Excellency Blackstar, what do you want to do?" The meeting point was in the middle of the border because both sides had their concerns. The dynasty was afraid that Ethereal would launch another sneak attack, and Ethereal was afraid that the dynasty would go back on their words and capture Dylan again. Therefore, the people of the Arcane Church easily misunderstood Han Zhao's words, although he did it on purpose. "Why are you so nervous? Are you afraid that we'll snatch him away?" Han Zhao curled his lips. The ethereal emissary pursed his lips and did not say anything. Dylan's face tightened and replied, "If there's a chance in the future, I'll personally visit the Black Star Corps. Then I hope you'll come with good intentions." Han Zhao raised his eyebrows. "Otherwise, what happened in the past few months will happen to you again." Hearing this, Dylan, who was quite stubborn, remembered the feeling of being sealed. He slightly shrank his body and did not say anything else. Facing Han Xiao, he slowly backed away and put a sufficient distance between them. Shua! A few tractor beams landed on Dylan and the others, sucking them back into the battleship. Han Xiao watched as Dylan spiraled into the sky. Then the arcane church fleet in outer space quickly turned around and left the planet. The deal is done. Let's go back. Han Xiao patted the emissary's shoulder, turned around, and walked toward the flying vehicle with a playful look on his face. The arcane church would definitely ask about how he felt when he was sealed, and Dylan would definitely cooperate. Then, the arcane church would know that the sealed beyond grade as could still think, and if they were sealed for too long, their consciousness might die. The arcane church originally did not know about the possibility of death from the space-time amber, but after receiving Dylan's report, they would definitely be anxious and would have no choice but to break the seals on the others as soon as possible. This way, they would be even weaker in the negotiations with the Empire. In order to save time, they might have to compromise with even more excessive conditions. Even a mute could not voice his grievances. One word, miserable. I tricked this bunch of scammers again. Han Xiao laughed in his heart. A person's happiness was often built on the pain of others. Lu Sun was not lying. The deal went smoothly, and Han Xiao followed the troops back to the dynasty's border outpost. He then received news from the dynasty's upper echelons that the arcane church would send out beyond grade as to participate in the operation to annihilate God. It was confirmed that the few dynasty allies participating in the operation had already left and were heading to the designated assembly point. They would then set off together and set foot in the primeval Star River. After resting in the outpost for a while, Milizau's came over. Black Star, I'm going to the assembly point directly. Do you have anything else to do? Same here. There's nothing else. All right, let's go together. The injuries from the 10,000 deity scepter have not completely healed yet. Do you still have that? Give me a few hundred needles. I do have that recovery medicine, but you know the equivalent exchange, right? Tell me, how much dragon blood do you want? Do you want mine? Cough, cough, we'll talk on the way. Han Zhao's mouth twitched. As expected, as long as one crossed the bottom line, there would be a second time. Milizau's originally refused to provide his dragon blood, but seeing that Han Xiao had collected quite a lot, he seemed to have given up. Since he already had it, there was no harm in giving some more. It also sounded a little strange and exciting. The two of them did not waste any time at the border and set off together. The security in the dynasty was good, and other than Milizau's being a little anemic, the two of them did not encounter any other problems. They were the first to arrive at the assembly point and waited for the other allies to arrive. At the same time, in a certain desolate universe belt in the primeval Star River, the Fallen Ark fleet was hovering above a fixed star, and its energy shield was blocking out the powerful radiation energy. In the large command room of the main ship, Hawkizan stood in front of the porthole and looked at a certain spot on the surface through the zoom function. That was where God had landed. The energy of the fixed star formed a huge whirlpool with God at the center. The accumulated energy of the fixed star was too dazzling, and even with the senses of a calamity grade, it was difficult to see God's figure clearly. The chaotic flow of particles interfered with the detection radar, and the target area was even covered by God's concealment esper ability. No one could see what God was doing on the fixed star. His Excellency God has already told us to stop here for 2 days. What's he doing up there? One of the crew members was impatient. I don't know. Hawkizan lightly pulled on his tongue. This was a habit he had when he was hesitating. 2 days ago, God had told them to wait in the outer space of his fixed star while he landed on the fixed star, absorbing energy like a bottomless hole, forming an expanding energy whirlpool on the surface of the fixed star. On the surface of the fixed star, God opened his arms, and an endless stream of fixed star energy flowed into his body. He had the Esper ability to absorb energy from the outside world, and it was called Esper ability, Black Hole. He had once displayed this ability when fighting Han Xiao. As the energy flowed in black mist-like figures separated from God's body and turned into black crystal ball-like objects. They floated around God, and a dark red light shone in the center of the spheres. These black spheres were all doppelgangers that God had created by absorbing energy crazily. The stronger a person was, the greater the improvement they would receive when using the evolution cube. God's strength had increased tremendously, but he could feel that his body had yet to be completely transformed. A considerable amount of evolution energy was deposited in his cells, like a treasure sealed in a box. The evolution of his life level was the key to opening the box. God did not have an interface, so he did not know that this was the first time an expert used the evolution cube to obtain an additional race evolution opportunity. If he were to complete a new advancement in the future, then he would be completely reborn. However, the evolution cube did not have the ability to level up or advance, so God did not receive such an enhancement. However, although the evolution energy could not allow God to break through, it did release some restrictions on his abilities. For example, the burden on his genetic chain. Due to the conflict in his genetic chain, God's main body could not have too many abilities at the same time. His doppelgangers could make up for this, and the Esper abilities that were given to his doppelgangers could not be used by his main body. However, there was an obvious flaw in this method. God was not able to create doppelgangers without any burden, because the ability to maintain the existence of his doppelgangers was an Esper ability that needed to be activated all the time. If God's main body was a computer, every Esper ability was a program, and the upper limit of his genetic chain was the memory. Thus, maintaining his doppelgangers meant that the program was always on and occupied his memory. The stronger the doppelgangers, the more doppelgangers there would be, and the more memory the program would occupy. Only when a memory was empty could there be space for other Esper abilities. Thus, God did not use his doppelgangers in a head-on battle largely because of this. Doppelgangers would weaken his main body's combat ability to a certain extent. However, the evolution cube changed this point and optimized his genetic chain according to his own characteristics. Simply put, it was to expand his memory and optimize his program. The upper limit of his genetic chain increased, and the burden on his Esper abilities decreased, which meant that more Esper abilities could be used at the same time. To God, this was a fundamental enhancement. His doppelganger Esper ability underwent a transformation because of this. The current upper limit of his genetic chain was enough to support God to create more beyond grade A doppelgangers, far exceeding the previous limit. Furthermore, his main body still had plenty of memory. The quantitative change had reached a qualitative change. It could be said that the optimization brought by the evolution cube had even changed God's combat style to a certain extent. God was absorbing the energy of the fixed star here to create a large number of doppelgangers in preparation for the revenge of his enemies. After angering the Arcane Church and the Red Empire, God knew that these two organizations would surround him for the nth time sooner or later. Now that these two organizations were about to make a move, he would not wait for them to come knocking on his door without making any preparations. God cherished his life because only by living could he fulfill his wish. However, he was not afraid of danger because fighting was the path to becoming stronger. Cherishing his life and being fond of fighting were two characteristics that existed in him at the same time. The encirclement of universal civilizations had always been the best opportunity for him to test his strength. Only by fighting with a beyond grade would he be able to accurately gauge his strength. This encirclement was also an opportunity in his eyes, and its significance was not ordinary. This was the first time he was going to fight a beyond grade A after his evolution. God's heart was filled with anticipation. He would only know how strong the evolution cube had made him after he gave it a try. Recommended a book, The Capital is Earth by White Rice Introduction. Took off his diapers at the age of 3, stopped wetting the bed at the age of 5, peed 30 feet in the wind at the age of 10. being obsessed with his own beauty. Lin Ming never thought that he would become a warrior. However, after putting on his military uniform and picking up his gun, the entire galaxy became his battlefield. Chapter 887. The dynasty's encirclement team was gathered in a military area, which was a crucial interstellar field teleportation node. The military Stargate station here was directly connected to the primeval Star River. The Stargate network of the three universal civilizations extended in all directions. With the central galaxy as the center, the Stargate network connected all the star fields. This was one of the foundations of maintaining their dominance. After waiting for a few days, the other dynasty allies who participated in the operation arrived one after another. After the 7 of them arrived, they all boarded the flagship of the dynasty fleet. In the command room of the bridge, the 7 of them gathered together and greeted each other. Everyone's relationship was different, but since it was a cooperative operation, it was necessary for them to get to know each other. During Han Zhao's first trip to the dynasty's mother planet, Kohler had also been present, and the two of them had met before. However, Lotus Swordsman was the dynasty ally who had met for the first time. Your Excellency, Black Star. Lotus Swordsman nodded slightly. Her white hair was tied into a long braid, and her expression was cold and indifferent. Hello, this must be the first time we've met. Han Zhao also greeted her politely and extended his hand. Lotus Swordsman lowered her eyes and glanced at Han Zhao's outstretched hand. She hesitated for a while and shook her head, not intending to shake his hand. I don't like anyone touching my body. Sorry. Understood. Han Zhao did not mind and retracted his hand. Many beyond grade as had different habits, so he respected her wishes. This time, Milizhao's magic avatar came over and patted Han Zhao's shoulder. Your Excellency Lotus is our main point of attack in this operation. Her psychic ability is very unique and has extremely strong psychic penetration. It's not that exaggerated. Lotus Swordsman shook her head and said calmly, God also has a psychic esper ability that can protect his soul. At least compared to other aspects, the soul is one of God's few weaknesses. Hearing this, Han Zhao nodded and agreed. Including his doppelganger, he had fought God 3 times. Together with the information from his previous life, he had a good understanding of God's abilities. God's scariest advantage was that he had collected all kinds of esper abilities, so he had almost no shortcomings. He had high mobility abilities such as dimension crack and teleportation, as well as abilities such as strong self-healing and black hole to ensure the safety of his physical body. He also had all kinds of powerful attack, control, defense, transformation, and mental esper abilities. Compared to his physical body, God's soul was not that strong, so attacking from a soul level was more efficient. After chatting for a while, the commander of the fleet walked in. He saluted the 7 beyond grade and said with a deep voice, "The fleet is ready. If there are no other questions, we will head to the primeval Star River." As one of the Empire's 3 pillars, Milizhao's had the highest status in the team. He glanced around, and seeing that no one had any objections, he exchanged glances with Han Zhao and nodded. Let's go. All right. The commander came before the control panel and issued an order in the entire fleet channel. With a solemn expression, he said with a deep voice, "The God encirclement operation has officially begun. All troops move out." The dynasty fleet moved out, and the battleships spat out propulsion flames as they entered the Stargate one after another. At this moment, Han Zhao's expression changed slightly. Just as the commander announced the start of the operation, a mission notification popped up on his interface, and there were 2 of them. The first mission was Dynasty Battle Campaign, Fallen Arc, Repeatable. This was a faction series mission that could be refreshed repeatedly, and Han Zhao had done it once before. The small objectives in the mission were to kill different numbers and types of Fallen Arc members, and the mission with the most rewards was to deal with God. Reducing a certain amount of God's health would give him a huge amount of experience and dynasty contribution points, and destroying an ES God doppelganger would reward him with an ES God Descent card. Han Zhao's ES God character summon card was obtained from this mission. The second mission was Mortal Enemy of the Three Universal Civilizations. Mortal Enemy of the Three Universal Civilizations. Mission Introduction. Chaos gives birth to order, and order gives birth to chaos. They transform each other, but also oppose each other. The three universal civilizations rule the explored universe and are the embodiment of the established order, while ES God is the spokesperson of chaos and violence. He pursues strength by hook or by crook, and he has been given titles such as Slaughterer of Life, Kama Guide to the Crazy Believers, and so on. All the criminals in the universe are gathered under his command, spreading fear throughout the universe. The three universal civilizations are always thinking of getting rid of this cancer of the universe. And for this goal, they have once again united today, and you have participated in this glorious operation. Mission requirements. Follow the three universal civilizations to deal with ES God. Reward. According to the damage dealt to ES God, both the main body and doppelganger can be dealt, and it will be calculated as a percentage of HP. You will receive a random reward when you reach 20%, and you will receive a character summon card, ES God, when you reach 75%. If you deal more than 100% of ES God's HP, it will only be counted as 100%. Additional mission requirements. Cooperate with the three universal civilizations and successfully capture or kill ES God. Additional reward. Randomly draw 3 of ES God's abilities. Each time, you can choose a specific type of ability or talent, and it can be drawn 3 times or all at once. It's out. Han Zhao's eyes sparkled. Indeed, with the three universal civilizations working together to annihilate ES God, it was impossible for there not to be a mission for such a big event. He had done the first mission before, so he looked away after a glance. The second mission was the main one, and it seemed to have been triggered by the joint operation. The joint operation of the three universal civilizations was largely driven by him, so it could be said that he had created this mission himself. ES God was full of treasures, and the reward for randomly drawing his abilities was extremely generous. Furthermore, the random draw mechanism this time was different from the previous missions. In the past, the type of ability could not be chosen, and talents and abilities would be drawn together. This time, it was more targeted. There was also a breakthrough in the number of chances, reaching 3. Furthermore, unlike the previous one-time draw, this time it could be drawn 3 times. This meant that the maximum number of random options had increased from 5 to 15, and there were more possibilities. However, the more generous the reward, the more difficult it would be. The strength of the evolved ES God was unknown. While Han Zhao was happy, he was also worried about the success rate of this operation. Han Zhao looked at everyone. The other dynasty allies had calm expressions. Although they knew that they were going to deal with ES God, they did not show any signs of urgency. Among everyone, only he knew what it meant if they could defeat ES God. This might be a battle that concerned the fate of the entire explored universe. It also concerned whether he could develop steadily. In order to eliminate the hidden danger of the world tree, even if there was no reward, he had to defeat ES God. Thinking of this, Han Zhao calmed down. The dynasty has already created enough favorable conditions. The rest will depend on the actual operation. The primeval star river was a vast star field, even larger than the shattered star ring. It was divided into 31 star clusters, controlled by 4 supercluster civilizations. Its prosperity was comparable to the sea of star spirits, and it was in the second tier of the universe. The first tier was the central galaxy. Because the three universal civilizations strictly controlled the central galaxy, there were countless organizations in the second-tier star fields like the primeval star river. For example, the headquarters of the Ancient Ones was located in the primeval star river. In history, the primeval star river had its glory days. During the exploration era, it was the headquarters of a quasi-universal civilization. This civilization was a strong competitor of the three universal civilizations back then. Unfortunately, They did not survive the exploration-era war and disappeared. At that time, many local star cluster and star system civilizations were also destroyed in the war, leaving behind many ruins. In terms of a number of ruins, the primeval Star River was second only to the ancient Star Desert. Similarly, there were many desolate universe belts, which were densely distributed. Because they had a mission, the Dynasty fleet did not delay and arrived at the rendezvous point. A few days later, the teams from the Radiant Federation and the Arcane Church finally arrived and met up with the Dynasty fleet. Han Shao also saw the people sent by the other two organizations. 3 from the Arcane Church, 1 from the Radiant Federation. Including the Dynasty, there were a total of 11 beyond grade as. Chapter 888. Somewhere in the primeval Star River, the fleets sent by the Red Empire, the Radiant Federation, and the Arcane Church gathered. The 11 beyond grade, as who participated in this operation, gathered in the strategic meeting room of the Dynasty's flagship to discuss their strategy. According to the intelligence, God is currently at this location. A virtual screen displayed the star map of the primeval Star River, and a certain desolate region had a red that represented God's location. The commander of the Dynasty's fleet stood beside the virtual screen and explained the situation to everyone with a serious expression. The purpose of the 3 fleets was to deal with the millions of battleships God brought with him, and the commander's mission was to fully cooperate with the beyond Grade A allies. That's an ancient battlefield. Many planets were destroyed by the exploration era, and that region is filled with a large number of wandering meteorites. Manison nodded. He was a big shot in the primeval Star River and was familiar with the situation in the star field. The only beyond Grade A sent by the Radiant Federation was Manison. He did not come personally, but sent a mechanical shell with 3 mechanical planetary fortresses that stored a large number of mechanical troops. Although Manison was only 1 person, the armed forces he had brought over were not inferior to any fleet. He could almost be considered a faction of his own. A beyond Grade A from the Arcane Church knocked on the table and asked, "We only saw God's eyewitnesses. We only have the reports of God's troops. Where did this accurate location information come from? Can it be trusted?" This is the information provided by the local supercluster civilization of the primeval Star River. They have deployed a comprehensive surveillance system in the primeval Star River, and after receiving the report, they started to track God's troops. According to the location they provided, we used a star map to verify it. The result is correct, and the accuracy of the information can be guaranteed. The Dynasty commander replied solemnly. The 4 supercluster civilizations controlled the primeval Star River and had placed a large number of spies in this star field. God's appearance was enough to attract their attention, and under the Dynasty's request, they shared God's location and cooperated with it. However, they did not know the details of the joint operation between the 3 parties. After locking onto the location, they would be able to rush forward through the Stargate network and stop God. Han Shao turned around and glanced at them. The 3 beyond grade, as sent by the Arcane Church this time, were all people who did not participate in the battle on Planet Lighthouse. They were all psychics, mages, and launchers. This meant that there was not a single Esper among the 11 of them. The more noteworthy one was the Cannon Master, nicknamed Sun Hunter. He was a member of the Ancient Ones and the strongest of the 3 from the Arcane Church. He was familiar with the Mecha Empire, Milizaus, and Raven Loudy. This fellow's body was very pocket-sized, only the size of a palm, but its body was extremely dense. It was an almost extinct race in the universe, and its body had some characteristics of insects. At this time, it was wearing a miniature mecha and sitting cross-legged on the table. His body was small, but his weapons were mechanical guns and cannons thousands of times larger than him. The contrast was huge. Han Shao remembered that Aesop had once reminded him that some of the Ancient Ones were secretly looking for information about him, and this Sun Hunter was one of them. At first, he thought that this Cannon Master was looking for him to ask him to forge a weapon, but after thinking about it, he eliminated this possibility. The Ancient Ones did not need to ask a new beyond grade A mechanic to forge a weapon for them. During the meeting, Han Xiao had been observing the teammates sent by the other two parties. There was no need to talk about the Mecha Empire, as he could not see anything from their mechanical bodies. However, the Arcane Church seemed to have a bad attitude toward the dynasty's allies and the Mecha Empire. Han Xiao still did not know that the 10,000 deity scepter had been snatched away by the Radiant Federation. The Arcane Church was most angry with the Radiant Federation for taking advantage of the situation. With Ninja missing, the beyond grade A allies under Ethereal naturally would not be nice to the Mecha Empire. If not for the fact that they had a common enemy in ES God, the two sides would have fought on the spot. Since we know ES God's location, the initiative of the battle is in our hands. We need a battle strategy, Milizo said. You're right. Although ES God is a battle maniac, he's not a brute. There's no reason for him not to run when he sees the 11 of us. As long as he abandons his fleet and uses teleportation to escape, we won't be able to catch up to him. Sun Hunter replied. Although his body was small, his voice wasn't soft at all. It was as if there was a ball of muffled thunder in his chest. With a buzzing echo, the room trembled slightly. Han Xiao calmed himself down, knocked on the table, and said with a serious expression, "With so many beyond grade A combatants participating in this operation, it's obvious that they're not here to do business, but to get rid of ES God. If we want to succeed, there are two problems that have to be solved. First, we can't let ES God escape as soon as he sees him. Second, we have to reduce ES God's mobility and make him lose his advantage of fighting and escaping whenever he wants." Everyone nodded. Although the three universal civilizations had failed to encircle ES God many times in history, there were very few joint operations of this scale. Some of the beyond grade A allies present were only here to accept the mission and did not care about ES God's life or death. However, if they could not take down ES God with so many of them working together, it would be embarrassing for them. Thus, everyone present wanted to complete this mission and get rid of ES God, the mortal enemy of the three universal civilizations. The beyond grade as were resilient, and they had failed many times in history, so they would not have the mindset that they would fail this time. The first problem is easy to solve. Manison calmly said, ES God won't foolishly fight 11 beyond grade as head-on. We only need to split into two groups. The first group will fight ES God head-on and think of a way to delay him. The rest will lie in ambush and wait for an opportunity to strike. Han Xiao nodded in agreement. ES God was not an iron doll and would not try to fight 11 beyond grade as head-on. Although they had a lot of combatants, they definitely could not all appear at once. Otherwise, ES God would not even be able to fight once he saw so many of them. He would directly leave the fleet behind and run away, leaving the 11 of them behind to do nothing. You're right. The first batch of beyond grade as has to match the strength of the encirclement without scaring ES God away, Raven Loudy interrupted. Therefore, I think 4 or 5 beyond grade as is a better plan. It's best if it's 5. ES God has undergone an evolution, and his strength has increased. He definitely wants to test his strength. 5 people should match his expectations, Han Xiao said. Usually, the strength of the people sent to encircle ES God was equivalent to 3 ordinary beyond grade as. ES God's original strength was not a problem for him to deal with 3 ordinary beyond grade as, and he could escape unscathed even if he fought against 4 or 5 of them. As for higher level beyond grade as, that was another matter. However, as long as he wanted to run, no one would be able to stop him. With 5 people, not only could they give ES God pressure, they could also make ES God feel that the risk was not high and that there was no need for him to escape. Then, the first group will be 5 people. 3 from the Dynasty and 2 from Ethereal. Don't let ES God discover that the Radiant Federation is involved for the time being. Everyone quickly came up with a plan. This time, Milizo spoke again. However, if we don't restrict ES God's teleportation, the ambush will be meaningless. Even if we launch a surprise attack, ES God can escape at any time. Thus, restricting his mobility is more important. Otherwise, the operation will definitely fail. Hearing this, the mage from the arcane church spoke. That's right. The five of us will hold ES God back, and the work of restricting ES God's mobility will be done by the ambushers. This will require us to use space magic to envelop the battlefield and cut off the multidimensional and subspace channels in this area. This will temporarily separate this area and cut off ES God's dimension crevice ability. We also have to make space-time more stable so that all teleportation and hyperdrive abilities will be ineffective. This will turn the battlefield into a space-time locked area. This is a huge project. Everyone nodded. This was an effective method to trap ES God, and it had been proven in history. However, it was getting harder and harder to achieve. Firstly, this would require a lot of time. The larger the battlefield, the more work it would take to modify it with space magic. Even a beyond grade, a mage would not be able to complete it quickly. Secondly, ES God's alertness was not low and would usually escape before the space-time locked area was formed. Even if ES God fell into a trap, it was not as if he had nowhere to run. He could still use normal methods to break out or use some Esper abilities to slowly create a space-time crevice and escape the space-time locked area. In this limited time, it was basically impossible to catch ES God or kill him. He was not a weakling, and his powerful self-healing and defense Esper abilities would allow him to stall for a long time. I have a space-time stabilizing device that can be activated quickly, Madison said slowly. It can reduce ES God's dimension crevice and teleportation abilities to a certain extent. It should be able to temporarily lock ES God down and create an opportunity for the ambush team to enter. He would be able to chase ES God away by himself, but ES God was too slippery, and it would be difficult for him to catch him. All the space-time locking devices in his hands required some time to activate, and ES God would have long disappeared. Furthermore, Han Xiao had rejected his deal, and Madison was not willing to work hard. The Radiant Federation's request did not have much of a binding effect on him, and he planned to cooperate with his teammates. To put it simply, Madison positioned himself as the controller or support in this team battle and did not want to carry. Milizaos said slowly, if we want to create a space-time locked area, the 5 people fighting in the front first have to hold ES God in one area and not let him run around. We have 3 mages on our side, all hiding in the dark. 2 of them will use space-time magic to change the battlefield, and 1 of them will cover the flow of magic energy to reduce the chances of ES God discovering them. The people fighting in the front also have to cooperate and make ES God focus on the battle. We also need a psychic to attack his mind and confuse his senses. We have enough manpower, so it's not difficult to do this. However, this is far from being successful. Raven Loudy hesitated for a moment before speaking the truth. If ES God falls into the trap, we have to get rid of him before he escapes. Otherwise, all our efforts will be wasted. With ES God's ability, this is very difficult to do. As soon as he said that, the room fell silent. Everyone frowned. Although this was the first time they had the most people encircling ES God, if they could not solve this crucial problem, it would only be a repeat of history and a new failure. Just from the discussion before the battle, they had already felt the thorny problem and could not find a solution. ES God was very difficult to deal with, and everyone knew that they needed some variables. Just as everyone was thinking hard about how to solve this problem, Han Xiao took a deep breath. He had 2 variables in his hands, the space-time amber and Esper silence. These 2 abilities could have a decisive impact on the situation. This was also the difference between this operation and the failures in history. Han Xiao pondered for a moment before standing up and attracting everyone's attention. He looked around and slowly said, I have a plan. I have an idea. More than 10 days later, in a desolate universe belt in the primeval Star River, after staying near a star for a few days, ES God's fleet set off again and move along the planned route. After sailing peacefully for a period of time, the fleet's radar detected something abnormal. A dynasty fleet appeared right in front of them. When the Fallen Ark fleet discovered the other party, the 2 sides were already very close. The Dynasty fleet used stealth mode to quietly approach and only revealed their disguise when they were too close. The Fallen Ark fleet did not turn around and escape, but went forward under Hakuzen's orders. Both sides quickly appeared in each other's vision and stopped at the same time, facing each other from afar. Woo woo woo. The alarm sounded and spread throughout all the Fallen Ark battleships. In the main ship hall, God woke up from his deep sleep and opened his eyes. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the walls. A look of anticipation flashed across his face, and he slowly stood up from his throne. It's finally here. I hope I can enjoy it to my heart's content. Another book recommended by P.Y., titled The Second God Kingdom, written by Human Bait. 99 years of compulsory education have taught you how to become an outstanding god. Now, you will enter the true Second God Kingdom. Unleash your strength and defeat all the abominations. Fight for believers with the chosen ones, just like in a simulation game. Do your best, sons of God. Let the trial of 100 gods begin. At this time, Zhang Fan, who was thinking about how to sleep more comfortably, was confused. P.S. There seem to be more people coming to find me recently. I should make fewer of them in the future. Chapter 889. In the pitch-black universe, the two fleets faced each other. God's figure flashed, and he disappeared from his throne, appearing in the command room beside Hakuzen. The other party is the Dynasty's armed fleet, with a scale of 5 million battleships. The performance of their battleships is much higher than ours. Since they are able to intercept us, it means that they have grasped our coordinates. My suggestion is not to fight and retreat immediately. Hakuzen calmly analyzed the situation upon seeing God. However, God ignored him and released his energy senses. In his senses, there were 3 dazzling energy sources in the Dynasty's fleet, all of which were beyond grade as. Sensing the number of opponents, God revealed a look of disappointment. Only 3? This time, the radar sounded again, and an arcane church fleet appeared behind them, surrounding God's fleet with the Dynasty's fleet. Sensing the appearance of 2 beyond grade 8 energy sources from the arcane church, God's brows finally relaxed. 5 people. Only then will there be value in fighting. The Red Empire and the Arcane Church have indeed joined forces. It seems like they have been lying in ambush here for a long time. The size of their fleet is more than 3 times ours, and they plan to annihilate us. Your Excellency God, I suggest we break out of the encirclement and retreat immediately, Hakuzen slowly said. God did not even look at him and calmly said, Inform the entire fleet to prepare for battle. Stall them and don't let the fleet disturb my battle. Understood. Hakuzen's tone had a hint of as expected. He knew that God did not care about their lives at all and only treated them as tools. In front of God, Hakuzen gave the battle order, and the Fallen Ark fleet changed their formation, facing the outside and forming a defensive formation. God nodded. The next moment, his figure flashed, and he teleported into the universe outside the battleship. Immediately after, a wave of psychic energy exploded with God at the center. The Dynasty and Ethereal battleships were equipped with psychic shielding devices that could resist psychic energy to a certain extent, but the 5 beyond grade has received God's psychic energy and built a channel to communicate. Han Shao was among them, and the moment he connected, he heard God's calm voice. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Hearing this, Han Zhao's eyes flashed. He exchanged glances with his companions and understood each other's meaning from their eyes. If God had teleported away right from the start, they would not have been able to stop him at all. However, God's words clearly meant that he was prepared to stay and fight, so the first step of the god-slaying operation would be considered a success. After exchanging glances, Han Shao and the other 2 left the Dynasty battleship and entered the universe. The 2 people from the Ethereal faction also flew out of the fleet and surrounded God from afar. The atmosphere was tense. Milizos and the other two mages hid in the dark and set up a space-time lock. Manison hid the fact that the Radiant Federation was involved and also laid an ambush, only lending the space-time stabilizing device in his hands to others. After some discussion, the 5 people who would fight ES God head-on were Han Xiao, Vru, and Lotus Swordsman from the Dynasty, as well as Sun Hunter and a psychic from the Ethereal faction. The 2 psychics were mainly in charge of psychic attacks. Viru was half a tank, and Sun Hunter was an ADC. Han Xiao was the best. He had descended with his main body this time and was going all out. He was the main tank, control, physical damage dealer, pinning down ES God, and so on. Blackstar, it's you again. ES God glanced at everyone before locking his eyes on Han Xiao. Since you attacked me, this day would have come sooner or later. Don't tell me you didn't know. Han Xiao raised his brows. Sigh, fate is really interesting. I clearly didn't plan to deal with you, but you still refuse to let me go. You're seeking death, or rather, you're all seeking death. ES God shook his head. Hearing this, Sun Hunter could not help but interject coldly. I don't know if that rotten brain of yours still remembers how many times you've been beaten back by 3 beyond grade as. Facing the 5 of us, do you think you still have a chance of winning? Heh, that was me in the past. Speaking of which, I still have to thank Blackstar for the evolution cube. The Dynasty and Ethereal will regret sending you guys to deal with me. As soon as ES God's voice sounded, Sun Hunter launched the first strike. A modified psionic annihilation particle cannon appeared beside him. His tiny body emitted blinding mechanical force, which flowed through the cannon like an extension of his limbs. He controlled the cannon to shoot out beams of psionic annihilation particle cannon that were so dazzling that they seemed to be able to pierce through space. ES God teleported away, and these annihilation particles that were enhanced by launchers easily penetrated the shields of the fallen Ark battleships one after another. The strong alloy armor was like paper, quickly shattering. The beam of light pierced through the hull of the battleships, and in an instant, the entire battleship collapsed toward the beam of light as though it was being devoured. Not a single part was left. The battleship was completely annihilated at the atomic level. The first shot was fired, and the Dynasty and Ethereal fleets suddenly opened fire. The fallen Ark fleet fiercely retaliated, and the dark universe was instantly illuminated by the crisscrossing beams of the particle cannons. The battle suddenly erupted. Han Zhao's group of 5 also launched their attacks. Psionic Prime led the Apostle weapons and led the Mech Legion to surround ES God. Viru held his weapon and charged toward ES God. Lotus Swordsman and another psychic directly launched wave after wave of psychic attacks. Sun Hunter seemed to have become a cannon that never stopped, crazily attacking. The situation instantly became chaotic, and the battle entered its climax. ES God's combat style was to flexibly use his abilities according to the environment. Facing the encirclement of 5 beyond grade as, he would not forcefully fight them head-on. He had the ability to teleport, and the pressure from the encirclement of the 5 was greatly reduced by him. He could even pass through the encirclement of the Mech Legion and easily approach them. His powerful mobility meant that he had the initiative, and he was in an almost undefeatable position. He could choose to fight or leave with a single thought. Therefore, ES God did not intend to escape for the time being. Instead, he treated the 5 of them as good opponents to test his strength. However, defeating 5 beyond grade as alone was something no one in this universe could do. This was not a simple comparison of strength. The density of attacks from 5 beyond grade as was enough to make an ordinary opponent unable to retaliate. ES God had the advantage of mobility, but Han Zhao's group of 5 could take care of each other, so he could not defeat them one by one. The situation was in a stalemate. Han Xiao had always been wary of ES God, worried that ES God's strength would increase by leaps and bounds after his evolution. However, after exchanging blows with ES God, he felt relieved. During the battle on Planet Lighthouse, Han Xiao had fought ES God before, so he had a good understanding of ES God's strength. ES God's strength had indeed increased, but it was far from reaching the point of transformation. It seems like the strengthening provided by the evolution cube is not enough to change his strength completely. He's still in the beyond grade A realm. Han Xiao secretly heaved a sigh of relief. If ES God had really broken through the limits of the beyond grade A realm and reached the so-called new level, there would be a huge gap in his strength, just like the gap between a calamity grade and a beyond grade A. Luckily, although the evolution cube was useful, it did not have the ability to allow one to break through. When he was making the plan, he had already tried to overestimate ES God's strength. However, the strength ES God displayed did not reach his expectations, so he had a greater chance of success. The other four all had the same thought. If ES God's strength did not increase beyond their expectations, they would not have much pressure holding ES God back. However, the next moment, something happened. ES God teleported again, dodging another wave of attacks. He then opened his arms and sent out a message to everyone. The warm-up is over. As his voice sounded, black spheres popped out from ES God's body. These were all doppelgangers that he had created long ago. They were all activated and turned into black mist-like human bodies that contained surging energy. Every doppelganger had received a different Esper ability from ES God and had quasi-beyond grade A strength. As for the number of doppelgangers, there were dozens of them. Why does he have so many doppelgangers? Sun Hunter's expression changed drastically. ES God's information was no longer a secret. Everyone knew that there was an obvious upper limit to his doppelganger ability. Using so many beyond grade A doppelgangers at once had already exceeded the record. Seeing this, Han Zhao's heart trembled, and he instantly understood. The evolution cube did not allow ES God to break through to a new level, but expanded his strength at the same level. It did not increase his depth but breadth. Compared to other systems, mechanics had the deepest fear of quantitative changes. Mechanics relied on expanding the size of their mech legion to continuously increase their strength and finally form a qualitative change. The evolved version of ES God had the same effect. ES God's strength did not have a breakthrough, but he had obtained a stronger doppelganger ability. With dozens of beyond grade A doppelgangers, each of them could be considered half a beyond grade A super. Even if the doppelgangers were weaker and shared different Esper abilities, they were still extremely powerful troops. This meant that the number of beyond grade as Han Zhao's group of 5 had to deal with had increased from 1 to dozens. The threat level had increased exponentially. Originally, it was not as if there had never been more than 5 beyond grade as sent to deal with ES God. Even if ES God could not win, he could always escape unscathed. However, this time, ES God already had the ability to face 5 or more beyond grade as head-on. He was not satisfied with just escaping. If he could defeat or even kill the 5 beyond grade as sent by the universal civilizations, he would break his own record. He would be able to intimidate the universal civilizations and obtain the most satisfactory result from the combat strength test. However, ES God did not know that there were more than 5 opponents. There were still 6 people hiding in the bushes, waiting to ambush him. As soon as the dozens of doppelgangers appeared, they split up. Most of them rushed over to fight with Han Zhao's group of 5. The situation changed from 5 people surrounding ES God to 5 people surrounding him. The remaining doppelgangers entered the battlefield and used their beyond grade A strength to madly attack the Dynasty and Ethereal battleships. The fallen Ark fleet, which was originally at a disadvantage, gradually turned the situation around. The pressure on Han Xiao and the other 4 increased sharply. It was as if they were facing the attacks of dozens of beyond grade, as with different abilities. If not for the help of the Mech Legion, the other 4 would not have been able to hold on at all. Through his doppelgangers, ES God displayed the various Esper abilities he had accumulated without holding back. His main body retained strong self-healing and Esper ability, Black Hole, while the other doppelgangers had all sorts of strange Esper abilities. In the chaotic battle, Han Xiao looked at ES God's main body, which did not join the battle, with a solemn expression. His performance at that moment was truly in line with his nickname, the god of Esper abilities. The 5 of them were surrounded by danger. Han Xiao was still fine as his main body was tanky enough. However, the Mech Legion was being rapidly depleted under the attacks of the Beyond Grade and the Apostle weapons were also in a tough battle. Han Xiao originally wanted to see if he could save the perfect Mechanical Sense character summon card, but seeing this, he knew that he had no choice but to use it. He immediately activated the perfect Mechanical Sense, and his mechanical force lightning pulsated, becoming thicker and brighter. While his machinery affinity skyrocketed, Han Xiao gritted his teeth and ordered the Mech Legion to focus fire on the ES God doppelgangers. Each Esper ability could only be used by one doppelganger at the same time, so most of the ES God doppelgangers did not have any resistance Esper abilities. They had the destructive power of a Beyond Grade A, but did not have the corresponding tankiness, so they were all very fragile. Thus, the bombardment of the Mech Legion achieved results very quickly. Beams of blue light hit the black fog-like figures, and under the psionic cannon fire, a quarter of the ES God doppelgangers were quickly eliminated. However, the next scene made everyone's heart skip a beat. ES God's main body relied on Black Hole, and not only did he not dodge, he even took the initiative to attack, crazily absorbing energy and creating new doppelgangers to replenish the losses of the doppelgangers. This scene fell into everyone's eyes, and everyone's heart was filled with solemnity. This is going to be troublesome. This is going to be troublesome. On the other side, the 6 Beyond Grade, as hiding in the dark, also learned about the ability ES God displayed through the mental communication network built by the psychics. Their hearts sank. Ravenlaud's expression was grave. ES God's doppelganger ability has been strengthened. Even if we successfully set up a space-time lock area, he will be able to use a large number of doppelgangers to buy time for him. This plan won't work. Their plan was to use space-time lock to trap ES God, and before he escaped, they would follow Han Zhao's plan to control ES God. However, the strength ES God displayed was beyond their expectations. Even if they managed to trap ES God temporarily, they would not be able to control him before he escaped. We have to give it a try. Don't stop. Continue setting up. Milizau's wasn't sure either, but they could only continue with the plan. There was no better choice. I wonder how long they can last, Manison said calmly. Before the trap was completed, they could not interfere and help. The job of stalling ES God could only be left to the 5 of them. Han Xiao and the others were under immense pressure. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.